Greetings. Are we in, Brian?
Yeah, we're in.
Nothing popped. All right. Well, greetings, you pop. I missed my normal 30 seconds, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Like, we're here. All right. Greetings, you gorgeous pop culture junkies, and welcome to Raw Rant, where we attempt to shine a light on your favorite movies and shows. We're here hanging out with some of your favorite nerds to hopefully stimulate your brains and recharge your geeky souls. I'm your host, Shane, and with me, as always, working on too little sleep and too many Red Bulls, Brian.
Yeah, that's me.
And as you can see, a couple of our normal friends aren't with us tonight as they are preparing for our awesome events in Las Vegas later this week. But do not fear. We have a man who loves Star Trek so much, he decided to dedicate his entire life to the Orville. JP, Egotastic FunTime.
Jalo long and prosper, everyone.
Also hailing from the land down under. Later, he'll teach us what the hell a Vegemite sandwich is. With the biggest Star Trek channel in Australia, Nick from Sci-Finatics.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show. Cheers.
Good to have you, brother. Also with us tonight is the man responsible for bringing us one of the hottest new Star Trek channels on YouTube. His Trexpertise is so good, he routinely embarrasses groups of legends with his trivia skills. From the Shuttlepod show, Mark Cartier.
Hello. Awesome to be here. Thank you for having me again.
And tonight's special guest on Raw Rant was so good the first time that we just had to bring him back again. 12 Monkeys, 911, Star Trek Picard, Picard Season 3 co-executive producer, Christopher Monfette.
Yeah.
Greetings.
Woo!
Greetings. Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Chris, I just want to tell you first off, behalf on everyone here on the panel, thank you for helping give us one of the best seasons of Star Trek in a very long time.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It was an absolute team effort. So,
yes, you guys are very good with the team effort stuff. And I got to tell you, it feels like a big team effort. Chris, we want to get into the finale and some of the stories, but can you first tell us about the IMAX experience? What was the atmosphere like beforehand and then seeing episodes 9 and 10 on that gorgeous screen?
You know, it was interesting because we didn't get to go. So
really
bizarrely. I think here in Los Angeles, sort of the first initial screening, they did 2 screenings. One was for Academy members for voting purposes. That was the big sort of premiere thing that you would have seen online, where all the folks were there and the great panel. And so they needed to really fill the theater with Academy members. And so some of the writers and producers, we weren't able to attend, and then the tickets for the public screening sold out like that, thanks to our incredible fans. And some of us either didn't get tickets or didn't want to take a ticket from someone, who might otherwise have an amazing experience seeing it for the first time. But I did have the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to sit with Terry on the Warner Brothers lot and do the final mix for that. So I did get to see it on the big screen. I was fortunate enough to hear it in all its glory. And, if it felt like a movie on the small screen, it's really a movie on the big screen. I mean, it does not feel like a 2-hour episode of television. It feels like a full-on feature film, and Terry could not have brought it home better. So
excellent. Yeah, it's funny, we got to see the Q&A because we didn't get a chance to go either. We had a couple of great fans who offered us tickets, and we were so bummed out. It was like we sat there refreshing every 2 seconds, trying to get tickets, and it didn't happen for us. So, but we got to see a video of the Q&A, and it looked, the energy looks incredible, and you can see everybody kind of sitting there. Did you get the sense? I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet, but is this the last time we're going to see all these guys together? That's what went through my head.
That's what I felt. I felt that on the last day of shooting, when you're walking out of the sound stages and you really have that sense of, are we going to get to do this again? And so, I really am hopeful that there are more stories to be told in this world. Obviously, Terry is as well. And I couldn't be more enthusiastic about the possibilities that lie in store. So, the fans have been passionate. They've showed up. they've thrown their support behind it, and now it's just time for the business folks to sort of make their considerations. But I certainly hope it is not the last time we see them doing their thing. So.
Excellent. And are there any rumblings? Is there anything you can share with us? Like any?
No, I mean certainly not more than Terry has already shared. I mean there have been certainly there's no shortage of sort of creative conversations that we have amongst ourselves offline all the time about what we would like to do, where we would like it to go. But in terms of is there or will there be a green light? That is so many sort of miles in the stratosphere above our heads at this point. I'm certain when someone wants to engage, they will, no pun intended, they will let us know. So
excellent.
We're here.
Like us. Go ahead.
I was just like, Chris, has there been any feedback from the studio in terms of the amazing reception the show's had in terms of it hitting the top 10, for example, in streaming services, the first Star Trek show ever to get as high as it has in the streaming services ratings chart? Has there been some good feedback from them on that sort of thing that would kind of lead you to believe, oh, there's some hope for a follow-up here?
Oh yeah, I mean, there is so much support internally. I mean, you just see some of the marketing muscle that the folks threw behind this, from that beautiful, gorgeous billboard in Times Square to a lot of internal recognition that sort of making that Nielsen chart was no small feat. So I think that the love for the series and the appreciation for the series has definitely been heard and received. And hopefully is in process of figuring out what the future of sort of 25th century, Terry Metalis driven Trek either will or won't be. So we could not have had better support from the studio and the network, and throwing their marketing muscle behind it, and really, and honestly, just really letting the fans do a lot of that work for them as well. I mean, I think that the fans have kept this trending so remarkably often. Like, I mean, I've never seen a Trek show, whether it's Star Trek Legacy, whether it's Star Trek Picard, whatever the hashtag is, sort of trend so well. So, I'm incredibly excited.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have to say, this is the first time I've ever cared about a show being spoiled, a Star Trek show being spoiled on the internet. Like, I had to turn off my phone on Thursdays for Picard because I didn't want it ruined. First time ever.
Well, we were, especially as we were heading into that home stretch, we were very nervous about spoilers getting out. We knew that screeners had been sent out, and we knew that there were some real big surprises coming in that last two. And so, we're thankful to all the folks in the community that were kind enough to warn about spoilers and not spoil. But in the age of social media, it's like, if you're not watching, as soon as the thing goes live, you're so susceptible to seeing those spoilers in the most offhanded, weird, from left field way. So, I hope folks, were really able to watch the show, with a good sense of surprise when those cards turned. And it was thrilling for us to just be on Twitter, trying to literally following along minute by minute, when the hour started, going, okay, now it's going to start when this happens or when this happens. So it's been exciting.
I know you're biased, but what do you think attributes to the rabid fan response to this? What do you think is the connection that has occurred?
I think it's it is so incredibly heartwarming that folks have not only come to this, but come together for this, which I think is the thing that moves me and moves us the most. It's not just that you have a fan show up and like the show. That's terrific. Like for folks to be acknowledging the hard work that the team has put in and what we've developed. But it's when they show up for each other, and when they show up as a community and within and amongst the conversation about how much they do or don't like the show, there is this really great conversation about how much they like each other. And you're seeing bridges get built. You're seeing people support each other. You're seeing folks of all sorts of different, sort of political, geographical, cultural spectrums coming together under this one umbrella of Star Trek, and really unifying underneath their love for it. And so I think it's that part of the conversation that really like touches me, right. Obviously it plays to your ego when someone likes an episode you wrote, when someone likes a line you wrote, when someone, just likes everything that this team has created. But when they also show up in the spirit of liking each other, and you really get to see what Trek has stood for so long. That's really cool. And that's really rewarding.
Hey, Chris, we got a question from the audience here.
Yeah.
Rebecca Spade asked, this is a question for Chris. Is it true you wanted Tuvix to be the big bad this season?
No, we always, we knew from moment one, what this season was about. Terry, really set the tone and set the story that this was going to be a generational tale, and that as part of that, when you are talking about how do we move beyond the things that have scarred us, so that we are making a better space for the next generation? How do we heal ourselves? How do we both change and not change as time passes? The ultimate reveal of the Borg, was there from moment one. It was the right story to tell. Even if we, even if Picard in previous seasons had explored other aspects of the Borg, they were the right antagonists ultimately.
Right.
Thematically for this season. So there was never a temptation to change or move away from it. And so they were the big bad for day one, minute one. So.
Yeah, you know what? I had that conversation and I asked the panel I was on Saturday. I said, can you think of a single villain that would have been better than the Borg? Out of all, you couldn't use a new villain, not in the one season you had to tell. It had to be a villain that was already established. Now think of one villain that is specific to TNG that you could have used besides the Borg. In fact, specific to the entire series. One villain. And even the people that were detractors because they didn't like the introduction of the Borg, going back to the Borg couldn't think of a better idea.
I think you could have picked villains that would have been more surprising. Like, I'm sure you could have just picked some obscure villain from, any section of the Star Trek mythos and, thrown them in there and had someone, kind of cock their head and go, oh, damn, I wasn't expecting that. But thematically and narratively, they were the right villain. And so, to tell the story we wanted to tell and hit the themes we wanted to hit, there was really never a question about whether we could do anything other than that. So,
right. Well, I know you guys were limited by funding and how much you had to spend on each episode. I know that Terry had said there were other people you would have loved to bring in. Is it possible now to share some of those people you might have wanted to bring in now that the show is over?
I think in an ideal world, like, yes, you would have loved to have had, a Janeway cameo. Like, those are all ingredients that, we love to play with, Voyager and DS9 and TNG that's our Trek DNA. And so, we would love to have been able to sort of play with other toys in the sandbox from those universes. But we got a lot of what we really wanted to do in there. There was a lot of sort of like in the very, very early days of what could season 3 be, fanfic level conversations, because it kind of starts from 30,000 feet and you sit there and you go, oh, what if there was a Jake Sisko story or something like that? But when Terry came into the room and said, this is the vision, this is the tale we want to tell, all the other pieces really kind of started to lay in very well. When you start to talk about, Seven's story and what, in advancing her storyline, which characters are the most meaningful for her, it totally made sense for that to be Tuvok. In some ways, Tuvok more than Janeway.
Right.
Even though that you might have gotten a bigger, on your feet, oh my God, there she is, fan reaction. Tuvok was the right emotional character for that story. And it was very much the same as, Ro for Picard. And so, we kind of got our first choices. And there were other, cameos you would have liked to have played with if you could have, but we didn't really leave anything on the table or had to sacrifice anything that I feel would have made the season any less than it already is. So.
That's awesome. We got a super chat from Tommy Tables. Thank you, Tommy Tables. He's saying, Chris, are the Paramount execs aware of how strong and favorable the reception to Picard season 3 has been, and of Terry being the main reason why? I think he's referring to like the hubbub around. Like, we haven't seen a lot online, a lot of praise toward this season from like official sources yet. So I think that's the question he's asking.
Yeah, I certainly internally, they've been incredibly supportive and they've been incredibly gracious in terms of their support and congratulations. And, and we will, I think it is such a large umbrella. And with, Strange New World continuing, with Star Trek Academy, with Section 31, there are so many developments in terms of what is next for Star Trek as a franchise. I think you don't want to crowd the plate too much. And so, hopefully as those projects get their due and fans respond to those projects how they will, eventually sort of room in the sort of Star Trek conversation will clear for, the future of sort of Star Trek legacy Trek. The way that I think we and Terry would like to continue it forward. But they've been nothing but supportive, great creative partners through the whole experience. And I imagine that conversation, will get louder as we get a little bit of space from the finale. So
awesome. Imzadi, our boy, and I will be waiting for you. I don't know if you guys were trying to make everyone cry, but congratulations.
Oh, yes. Totally were. Yeah.
Yeah.
The theme of family is so strong this season, the relationships between parents and children and legacy. Did you know the experience that our crew was having would resonate so strongly with the fans? I mean, I know you probably wanted to get there, but did you know it was coming?
Yeah, because I think we were telling across the board really human stories. And if those are the stories you focus on, the stories between and about people, regardless of the sort of like sci-fi paint you put on it, people will respond. People will find the ways that those themes and those stories echo what's going on in their lives. And so certainly parents and children, husbands and wives, like the love that we have for each other romantically, the brotherhood shared between a crew. Every character this season was battling with things that I think real people battle with in real ways in their life. And so, I think, yes, we put a sci-fi veneer on it and we turn the stakes up to 11, but hopefully if we're telling great stories, great human stories with these amazing actors who can then sell the material, and whose own humanity kind of shines through the role, then yeah, it didn't surprise me that people took to it as well as they did, because I think it was always our hope that they would, and that we would be writing something that would be meaningful to all sorts of people dealing with all sorts of things. So
it's very much like a much more mature Star Trek. Like Star Trek matured with the longtime fans, but also gave a lot for the newer fans to bite into.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the, when you look at the season, a lot of what we sort of set out to explore was like, because we grew up with these series much earlier in our lives, and sort of we have a kind of internal sense of, yeah, I'm roughly the same person as I was back then. I like the same things. I kind of look like an older version of that person, but I've also grown and changed in a lot of ways as well. And sort of we've all had the experience of like going back for like a 10th or a 15th or 20-year high school reunion, right? Where those people have sort of disappeared from your lives, and then you get to see them again and you recognize them instantly. There are aspects of them that are 100% the same, and you can pick up conversations that are 10, 15, 20 years old, but you also can recognize all the ways in which life has scarred them, changed them, healed them. And so, that was very much the vibe we wanted to bring to these characters, that they had seen things and been transformed by things and learned and grown, and in some ways had their growth stunted. Like, the death of his son in some ways stunted, Riker's growth as a person, and it takes the events of the season to unlock him and move him forward. So yeah, I mean, it was exactly that spirit that we were kind of embarking on when we wanted to chart where these characters had sort of come from since last we saw them. So
yeah, I felt that they were the same people that I knew, but more.
Yeah,
because there's been more life lived by them, and that came across.
Yeah.
Chris, when you guys were breaking the story for the season, was there anything that really what was the hardest aspect? Did it all just flow out naturally and there weren't any huge stumbling blocks, or was there one aspect of crafting the story for the season that was just, we spent weeks on this and we finally broke this aspect of the story? Can you tell us a bit about anything like that?
Yeah, there was a little bit of there was an architectural balancing issue in the first, say, 4 episodes between sort of Raffi and Worf story and the Titan story. So like we kind of knew that the Titan story had to move at a particular pace. And what you didn't want to do is sort of like while you're going through the Titan story, every time you go to Raffi and Worf story, someone goes, I really just I liked the Titan thing, or vice versa, right? So the balancing act of trying to keep both those stories moving so that you're turning cards and making reveals that make each storyline meaningful, because they ultimately don't end up connecting for, almost 5 full episodes, and in fact 6 to get them all in the same room together. So that was tricky, just trying to sort of orchestrate the balancing act of sort of which reveals you get where, then how you cut between them, so that they both remain sort of dynamic. So that was probably the trickiest part of breaking the earlier part of the season. And then by the time everybody's on board in 6, we had a really good sense of sort of like what every crew member's contribution to the narrative was going to be once you got them all together. So everything flowed really well after that. And then just really orchestrating the intercutting of 9 and 10, between the Enterprise and the siege against Space Dock, and making sure that you're feathering in emotion and jokes. Like that was like really surgical work that needed to get done later in the season. So,
Chris, we got a couple of chats here from Chuck A. Thank you, Chuck. What a great season 3, and what a great panel here now. Thank you, Chuck. And then Andre Benson says something that I want to actually follow up with a question. Andre, for $5, says, I literally set my alarm to 2:57 a.m. every Thursday when season 3 started to avoid spoilers. I never did that for any show. And this is the question I have to follow up with this. Thank you, Andre. This for some reason, this season felt very much spoiler heavy. Where if a spoiler got out, it was going to ruin it for someone. Were there moments in this season where you knew that this has to be a secret until this moment, or it's going to really cause trouble for people?
Oh yeah, I mean the Enterprise for sure.
The Enterprise,
because you don't want to there was so, it's one thing to have the idea of wouldn't it be great if we could reveal the Enterprise at the end of 309 and then have that back, and that's easy for us, right? Like we have that idea and then we pick up the phone and we tell everybody we're supposed to tell. That's what we're going to do. But then Dave Blass and his team and Akuda and amazing craftspeople come together to painstakingly build and lovingly recreate this set as a gift to Trek fans.
Right.
And the last thing you want is for all of that hard work to be blown by an Instagram or a picture or a leaked screener. So that you want people to really have that moment of they're doing it. And then the doors open and then the tears start. So that was the one we didn't want anybody to be robbed of.
What's amazing, Chris, is LeVar actually spoiled that months and months and months ago. And then, so you guys were aware, right? So he spoiled it and we were all like, okay. And then everybody forgot about it.
I know.
Did you notice that? It's he spoiled
so
it.
So lucky with that.
Right. I was shocked. Brian and I were talking about it. I'm like, LeVar spoiled this. And and it seemed like nobody was talking about it, and we weren't going to bring it up again because we didn't want to renew, talk about, and everybody was cool about it because there were people who knew that just didn't say anything, and I think it turned out good. So, what was your experience as a Star Trek fan walking through the Enterprise D set and being on that ship?
It's really interesting in the sense that, there is a degree when you're doing these things of you're just exhausted, right? Like you're cranking out scripts, you're doing 14-hour days on set, you're doing both of those things at the same time. And so, I've walked onto a lot of amazing sets. I've seen a lot of amazing things that like my nerd heart should go aflutter for. And I've seen it with like a coffee in my hand and I'm just tired. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. Okay. What take are we on? And
right, man.
And this was one of those moments that totally cut through all of that. I mean, you walk onto that set and you are a kid again, and you are sort of transported, and you cannot help but sort of be utterly uncynical and really appreciate that, when all good things finished, when the movie's finished, like there was a real sense of not that I certainly ever as a young kid in Massachusetts thought to myself, I'm going to stand on that set someday, but it never would have entered your mind to think that you could or would. And so to suddenly now find yourself standing in a place where it should be virtually impossible for you to ever have stood, that bears that nostalgic, weight on your own sense of geek and nerddom. It's pretty amazing. And you have to be humbled by it. And that is a gift that our amazing production crew, gave not only to audiences, but to us, really. I mean, to the writers and to the producers to have that experience.
Can you tell us really quick, how did it come about? Who decided, like, look, we're going to recreate the D? Because you knew, I mean, whoever was making that decision, it was going to be painstakingly difficult, but you guys were committed to doing it. So can you just tell us the story about how that decision happened and then what it was like bringing, everybody back, the Akutas and everybody?
Well, that decision was made, right at the top. I think Terry really had a sense of, that's the last character that you need to introduce. That's the last sort of like vivid sense memory of that series that we all have in our heads. And so something would have been missing to introduce all the people, but not to have the ship. And so, there was, and we knew it would take, a lot of time and care and craftsmanship to do. So that's not a decision you can just sort of make, with 3 weeks to go on the season. And so, we got people cooking on that immediately. And there were a lot of, I shouldn't say there were a lot of, but part of the reason that the season is somewhat of a bottle, given we had those beautiful sets and yes, like we had just come out of season 2 and COVID costs and all of those things. And so of course you want to produce as sort of contained and responsibly produced season as you can. But there were, things that we would be financially conscious of to make that goal of getting the Enterprise D at the end a reality. And so, we would, we from moment one were creatively and logistically in service to building toward and paying off that idea. So
awesome.
Yeah. I got a couple of super chats here from Hiroshi the dog for $10. Thank you, Hiroshi. Long time viewer, man. Hiroshi the dog has been with us for like 6 years. Long time.
Thank you, Hiroshi.
It was an outstanding Star Trek season, and it has been the best, and it was the best finale ever. The Legacy show has to go on, and I want to add another super chat to that from 200 Watt Studio. Thank you, Hiroshi. 200 Watt Studio also says, Chris, thank you for the season. I know you guys are left alone for this, but I fear you won't be if you get a Legacy show. Legacies? Damn show. At least we have this, and the question. I think what he's trying to say there is, it's sort of known that you guys were given a lot of like free reign this season, and some fans are worried that if you do get a Legacy show, you won't get the same free reign that you got this season. I don't share that thought, but what would you have to say about that?
No, it's not that we were sort of an anomalous, in the sense that, like, they just left us alone. They were just tremendously supportive. We were at a time of great change for the series. We had come out of, we had sort of seasons 2 and 3 ordered back to back. We had come out of COVID, which had its own massively unique set of challenges and impacted season 2 in a number of ways. We had Akiva going off to really pioneer and shepherd Strange New Worlds. Alex, obviously, his attention needs to be on many given things at any one time. And so, at this sort of shifting landscape of Trek, where the keys were really given to Terry, there was just a lot of freedom offered to do it the way that we wanted to do it. And the way that we wanted to do it wasn't creatively risky, right? I mean, maybe in the sense of, if you knew nothing about it and you were just an executive who had no idea what TNG is, you might go, well, that's a lot of olds in the cast. You know what I mean? Like, where are all the crazy young people or whatever? That might have been risky on some level. But, we were saying, let's do the legacy cast, right? Which was always going to have a great nostalgia connection, a great marketing connection, great storytelling potential, proven actors. So we weren't trying to lead the franchise in some direction, that was going to set off alarm bells anywhere. And so we were very fortunate enough to have really supportive creative partners at a time that sort of gave us the keys and gave Terry the keys to do his vision his way. And I would expect that, if we were ever to be fortunate enough to do Legacy, that they would honor that, that they would continue to be the same menches they always were in allowing us to just do good work.
Yeah, Alex Kurtzman said himself during the Q&A portion, it was really actually great to hear. He said that Terry understands what the fans want and understands the emotions of the fans. And I think your whole team does, because you're all a bunch of Star Trek, guys, gals. Yeah. But, so it was nice to hear him say that, like, he sees that, because I think what a lot of, and what some of these super chats were saying was, it would just be a shame if you guys didn't get another Star Trek show. After this experience that everybody's had, it would just be a shame. And I know they've kind of locked themselves up with, they've got, Starfleet Academy coming, and they've now got the Section 31 show. Then all this stuff was planned way before you guys did Star Trek Picard season 3. So I know that you guys have other projects going on, but do you think that your team would prioritize doing something new for Star Trek, a new series?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we got the call tomorrow and it was, new series, let's go, writer's room on Monday, I can't imagine we wouldn't all be there, right. Because we love these characters. Not only do we love the characters, we love the actors. I mean, we try to have a real no assholes policy on set, right? Because you can't do something 14 hours a day for as long as you do a show with people who drive you crazy. And fortunately, this group of people are some of the most not only talented, but like delightful, heartfelt, funny, supportive. I mean, you couldn't not want to do that show with these folks. And so, I think we would absolutely all show up in a heartbeat to do that. So,
Chris, in terms of bringing back the legacy cast, was everybody on board right from the get-go, or were any of the legacy cast members a little more harder to convince to come back?
No, I mean, I'm not sure. Terry had a lot of those conversations, so he could speak to this better than I could. But certainly, my understanding of that situation was that most of them just needed to feel Terry's sincerity for their characters and for Star Trek in general. They just needed to know that it wasn't going to be, okay, you're going to bring me back to do a walk-on, it'll be a glorified cameo, and then you'll write something weird for my character that feels inconsistent. Or so, we sat down, we got a real sort of basic high level understanding of where we thought these characters had gone in their lives and how maybe they had changed and not changed, maybe what they were dealing with now. And one by one, Terry would get on the phone and he would talk it through with them and really prove not just his like bona fides for Star Trek, but his love and respect for the actors and the characters, right? Like, these are the people that have to show up convention after convention and justify choices that they had no role in making, right? Like they have to show up and say, well, here's why I think Dr. Crusher did this or number one did that, or when they weren't in the writer's room, they didn't choose that for the character, and so they are rightfully so protective and defensive of the character's legacy now that they thought those stories had been told and they'd put a cap on it. So I think all Terry ever really had to do was sit down and say, look, we're just going to give you one more great story to tell. And we're going to give it to you in a way that you believe in it, that it reflects not only you as an actor and how you've grown, but how those characters grown, so that when you're at your next convention, you are proud of this and not feeling like you have to apologize for or defend it. So I think once they understood that, and that's where we were coming from and Terry was coming from, they were on board. They were very excited to get back together in a room. So
that's awesome. We got a super chat from Marcus Quintus. Thank you so much for the multiple terrific stories. Frakes and Stashwick need to seriously be considered for Best Supporting Actor awards. What are the odds? Thank you, Marcus. What are the odds, Chris, of any Emmy nods going to Picard? What you think?
I have no idea. I know that they should. Science fiction, has such a strange place in sort of Emmy history, but I think Frakes has never been better than he is this season as an actor. I think his performances are best of his career, good, and in a way that is said not to diminish anything that had come before it. And I think Stashwick immediately connected with folks in a way that surprised even us. Not just that, look, we all knew you point a camera at Todd Stashwick, people are going to like what they see. He's compelling, he's talented, he has an energy about him that just invites you in, even when his character is trying to push you away. And so, but I think we knew that people would come to love him over the arc of the season, but I think we're even especially surprised at how much people came to like the most assholic version of Shaw. Even after the dinner table scene in episode 1, people were like, I hate him, but I love him. And you couldn't ask for something better.
We talked about this with him on our show this weekend, and we think that the idea that someone came in and told Picard no, basically to shut up and sit down, that was so shocking for so many of us.
Right.
He kind of held the Pulaski role for me for the season
initially, right?
Yeah, initially.
So
real quick, just want to say I loved how he was, he was a jerk at first, and then we find out self-admittedly by the character that he's broken.
Yeah,
he's broken. There's a hero in there somewhere, but it's got all this. It's just brokenness all encasing him.
So a couple of super chats about that topic I'm going to bring up right now because they're too perfect. First off, from the Lock for $2. Thank you, Lock. He asks, so when did the Shaw death regret start to set in?
Episode 2. There's, we obviously text and chat with each other and stuff. And I think probably right around episode 2, we started to get to that point where we're like, people may riot in whatever 8 weeks, 7 weeks from now. But we never regretted the choice because we knew what it was building to. We knew what it would serve, and who it would serve. It was always right, to quote Jeremy Strong. It was right dramaturgically, but it was we certainly did not expect the. We expected the love. We didn't expect the speed with which the character was received.
Right.
And so we were we started to joke amongst ourselves, like, guys, how are we going to ask the internet for forgiveness?
Yeah, Shay and I saw it early, and we thought the same thing. We didn't expect it to be so quick. We were like,
Right.
everyone, you're gonna love this character. And then it was like episode 2. Everyone loves this character. We're like, oh, that was too fast.
What's your headcanon on how we bring him back? How you would bring him back?
Well, before you say that's a great question, because Tommy Tables for $6.99 asked the same question. Chris, I know there's a talk of Shaw coming back to an innovative way, but would the captain first officer dynamic with Seven still exist in that scenario? So is there a way for you to bring him back, and would that still exist?
Okay, this is kind of 2 questions in one. I'm not going to tell you that. Why would you
put him in a synth body? Put him in a synth body, like Picard.
We've done that. Don't do that.
In a million years, I'm not going to tell you how we would do it if we did it. I would only tell you that, look, there are ways, and we have talked about them, and I think actually Todd himself has offered up some really excellent ideas and really like nerdy ideas about how Shaw could continue. And so look, if we were fortunate enough to move forward, I think we would be insane not to figure out a way to incorporate Shaw into the story in some form or another. Would the captain first officer dynamic exist? I think if anything, be flipped, right? Not to say that Shaw would then become Seven's first officer, but certainly in the fanfic of that, what would follow would now be him being a part of Seven's crew, and how would that character respond to taking orders, and what version of that character would even exist to do that. So there's so much great drama that we can mine in the future in Success, but I'm not going to
Chris,
come out and tell you.
This is how our fans, they always ask questions that are 2 parts on purpose to try to get you to admit something.
You have to remember,
because that dynamic,
go ahead.
The dynamic between Shaw and Seven, that was just gold. That's something you want to see again. In some ways, as good as the finale was, seeing that dynamic between Seven and Shaw, I want to see more of that. As opposed to the Seven Raffi dynamic as Captain First Officer, I reckon that Shaw Seven dynamic is just that's gold.
Well, I think what's interesting is if you were to move forward, I think that the suggestion would be Seven and Raffi have a lot of very human, very personal friction between them. They have a past and they have a history. They have the ways in which they fit and the ways in which they butt heads. And it's a very interesting dynamic between them. They have a very deep relationship that they've already explored and will continue to explore. But what's interesting about, Seven and Shaw is their relationship is in some ways reputational. Like it is about rank, and it is about function on the ship, and to see that grow into something more personal would be interesting once they start really learning about each other as people and as characters, and then how they would butt heads now that their sort of roles are reversed in the hierarchy of the ship would be fascinating. It would be 2 very different kinds of sort of captain officer relationships you could build there.
Well, we already have sarcastic EMHs. So
I was gonna say I'd love to have a future Shaw appear and say, what's the nature of your command emergency?
Yes.
Oh.
Good point, JP.
And we could have 2 captains, because there is a precedent set on Discovery where you got Burnham and Saru both holding the rank of captain and both serving on the same ship. So there's precedent there for that dynamic.
Absolutely.
Andre Benson for $2 says, "Hey, no one said he was dead on screen."
Go ahead, Mark. Thank you, Andre.
I was just going to say, in the original crew movies, you've got Scotty, Kirk, and Spock all at the rank of captain.
Yep. Sure.
Make it so.
Yes, please. Hey, I got a question from Joey for $5. Thank you, Joey. I have to ask about the commercial breaks between acts. What inspired that? Will current audiences appreciate them?
Is it the tiers, right? Like different people get ads in different spaces and different markets and stuff. So you just build in commercial breaks where it makes the most sense to sort of create that sort of dramatic turning points. But yeah, I mean, I think, if you're used to streaming commercial free, back to front, certainly it probably flows differently than if you've got to stop every couple of minutes and watch an ad. But hopefully we're not pulling you out at any high points.
Yeah, and take it up with Paramount Plus. So
yes, yeah,
yeah. Also, I didn't experience any. I don't watch any ads on anything ever. I will immediately turn it off if there's an ad. I just refuse to. But the thing is, I noticed that because of classic TV, there are certain spots that might have been built in for that, but it didn't remotely take me out of anything.
Yeah, good.
So let's talk about something difficult here. The frustrated fans,
okay,
and those are the Beverly and Jean-Luc shippers. So we've been getting a lot of comments about, hey, so what's going on? What's with the ambiguity of all this? And it even gets more confusing, I think, when both of them drop Jack off at the G, right? Mm-hmm. And then when he's in his quarters, he puts an image of them together at some sort of formal event. So, Chris, tell us, what is the official status of these two characters, and why was it decided to not leave a firm ending for them?
I mean, I think the official status is that it's complicated, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's totally natural to, given all the history, want to ship them into a romantic relationship immediately. And that makes a ton of sense. But there's all kinds of families out there, right? There are functional families with, single parents, divorced parents, like non-married parents. So, this is one of those sort of heightened situations where simply because they came back into each other's lives, you can't expect the romantic connection to sort of rekindle immediately. And so the notion that Picard and Beverly are now certainly reunited. She is now back in Starfleet. She has a rank. She is no longer absent from their lives. They certainly must have a relationship where they are frequently in contact with each other. They're co-parenting in some ways an adult child. And so, what you want to do is you want to leave room, if there were to be future stories, for that relationship to grow and have somewhere to go from, without just sort of like shoving romance down the throat of the audience in a way that wouldn't be believable for either of those two characters. Ultimately, I think when fans say that they want something, what they're really saying is they want to earn something, right? Like, you want the reward of getting to the point where you've gotten what you want, but you've had time and drama and friction to get there, and then when it clicks, you feel that sort of like dopamine hit of like, yeah. And if we just said 1 year later and it cut to Picard and Beverly making out, you'd just be like, oh shit, man,
that took a turn.
I guess I got what I wanted in a 2
and then Laris is there. What?
Right. Laris, exactly, Laris.
Laris is confused.
This is a very different kind of family.
48 hours, Picard.
So, it's either perfectly okay that they are this interesting, non-traditional family that came together in this heightened way, and the love is there, but the romantic spark no longer is. Or it's also totally fine if in novels, comics, future series, or just in your headcanon, they redevelop that over time. But we can't just give it to you in a 5-minute coda in a way that felt earned and right for those characters. What felt more right than anything is that they have come together to parent and be there for their kid, who is embarking on this journey that they both embarked on in their youth, and to be there to support him that way.
So we got this super chat here from Aaron, which go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Was there any conversation about Laris reappearing at the end, being with Picard and the Crushers on the way back?
Yeah, some of that was logistics, some of it was scheduling, just in the sense that, like, we had Laris for that one episode up top. I think most of it was when Laris says goodbye to him in that first episode, and is I'll meet you in the bar, there was never, I think the undercurrent of that scene is she knows that this is goodbye. Like she knows that is not likely, given what she knows and understands about Picard and his former relationship with Beverly. So, again, what we didn't want to do is close the door on that option either. So if in your headcanon, in the year between the one scene and the next scene, Picard has gone off and Laris is waiting for him out there in the stars and he rekindled that relationship, then that's fine. That can exist in your head for now until it gets, written by someone else, at some other time. If he has gotten together with Beverly, also fine. And if he is simply just now a proud father with a new and reinvigorated sense of life, that's also fine. We didn't want to make the decision, just as another kind of like throwaway, whatever it was, whatever it is, whatever it will be, needed to feel earned. And so you just didn't have the real estate in that kind of wrap up to earn it. So, I feel like it landed very well. And I feel like there's room to either explore it in some other medium or to allow people to sort of write a little coda in their heads to what the happiest ending for Jean-Luc is. So.
Yeah. So just to cover up that with our member super chat from Aaron, $5, who's been asking me this question pretty frequently lately. She really wanted to know about this. And people have been waiting 35 years. Thank you so much for that, Aaron. I think you got the answer here. You guys really didn't also probably want to take the responsibility. You got TNG didn't answer the question after 7 seasons. And it kind of was left open. I don't know if you guys want to be the one to put the period on that anyways, because there could be more content in the future. We just don't know yet, right?
It's also not about content, right? Like, I think it is a very happy ending, like for them. Like, I think it is, look, I mean, there are people, who've been successfully married where that, for decades, and the relationship evolves into something that is in some ways not unlike the relationship that Picard and Beverly already have, right? Mm-hmm. Like that they know each other at their best. They've seen each other at their worst. They can communicate without having to say a lot together. They are perfectly in sync, not just as a crew, but as a people. And so I think they have, regardless of what sort of title or label you want to put on it, by the time we've arrived at these closing scenes, a very healthy respect and a real love and understanding for each other. And they are now united by the one thing that can unite two people the most and most meaningfully. So I think it is a very happy ending for them. And I think the specifics of that ending can be kind of written in headcanon or maybe played with and explored in future formats one day down the line. But I hope you took it as a happy ending, and I think it is. So,
Chris, my headcanon is that Picard and Beverly are happily together, and they're on their first honeymoon, and they're candle shopping.
Done. I think Picard and Beverly at Space Yankee Candle is yeah.
At the candle,
Chris, was there ever
in Hawaii?
Chris, was there ever any talk about bringing any of the previous seasons cast members back in for a last appearance, such as Soji or Elnor or anything? Because having spoken to Evan Evagora on several occasions, I know he would have been incredibly jealous at that scene with Raffi and Worf sparring on the La Sirena.
I think that I think if anything, we would have liked to have done a Soji data scene. That would have been nice. It would have worked thematically for both of those characters. Really by the time you get to the end of season 2, a lot of those great characters from season 1 and season 2 their stories have kind of been told. Rios' story gets told to I think a satisfying conclusion. I think Elnor. He had a big story in season 1, and I think ultimately as part of the conclusion of season 2, Jurati and her sort of subsect of the Borg, I think, are a great plot thread to sort of keep out there in the future for somebody else to potentially pick up. So it felt like by the time you'd spent 10 episodes with the legacy characters, it felt like if you were to sort of just bring back for kind of a one little finishing scene, one or more of the other ones, it might have felt strange. It might have felt like you were sort of like you weren't mixing the two in the right place. If you had come to this season without knowledge of episodes one or of seasons 1 or 2, you might have gone, oh wait, who's that person? It might have kind of skipped the record while you're trying to sort of land a smooth emotional finish. And so, while I think it would have been lovely to be able to do a Data Soji scene, I think at the same time it probably was the right decision to just let seasons 1 and 2 and those characters exist within the context of their stories, and then really finish out the legacy story on its own merits, on its own legs. So
we would have been okay with 10 more episodes, Chris. No problem. I mean, if you just need to add more content.
We got a members chat from Archmage Frey. I actually can't show it on screen for some reason, but he asked a great question. How did you decide that everyone hates Picard's wine? And thank you, Archmage. I'm sorry I can't put it up here.
Great question.
What an awesome question, and what an amazing through line.
I think it was, I can't remember exactly where it came from. It was at some point in the writer's room, we kind of acknowledged that in seasons 1 and 2, and then there are certainly moments in 3, like, man, just people, this show is just people yelling at Picard all the time. And then I think someone might have said, well, at least he has his wine. And then I think one of us might have said, yeah, but what if that sucks too? And then it kind of just became a little bit of a running joke. Like we put it in with in that first dinner scene, with Shaw, because it felt right for him to dismiss the wine. And then like the jokes would sort of show up in the scripts, and then, but we kind of stumbled into a running gag that totally worked for us. So we had a blast with it.
So good. That's awesome. From Oliver Lavera Farage. I don't know if I said this right, but hopefully I did. Oliver.
Sounds good.
Thank you for the $20. He says, I have so many good things to say about this season, but I feel if I write them all in the super chat, I might kill Brian. That is correct.
Thank you,
Oliver. I don't know why Shane has me read the super chats when I have dyslexia, but it's okay.
That's a good point. It's funny.
Will you and Terry come down to the 57-year mission in Vegas because you guys will drink for free?
Nice. Thanks,
I love nothing more than a good Vegas trip. If I could make it, I would. And I'm always happy to take a free drink. So,
see that, Oliver?
There it is.
I know Shane and I are planning on going down there. So if we work it out and we all get to be there together, you're buying us all drinks. So I
didn't say all of us. You said Chris. You said Chris.
You've committed
I'm
more
on
than
Chris's
$20 super chat. Like, my bar tabs are high. I just want you to know. So
yeah, get ready, Oliver.
Very good. So question here. This is a question that's come up recently that hopefully you guys can. So the Vatic hand thing.
Yeah.
So we've got the obviously Vatic's boss, or the person that she's afraid of. And then we end up finding out that it's the Borg Queen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how. I don't know if it translated well during the show that was actually the Borg Queen. Now, we heard that there was some cutting that happened. Can you kind of explain what that transition would have been like ideally, other than Picard kind of explaining it, making that connection to the Queen?
We had kind of two sort of canon answers for that, and I think Terry, and I don't want to sort of do the injustice of ham-fistedly repeating his answer, but there was one sort of tech solution, which is that there was a sort of a relay that reverberated through her sort of changeling DNA that redid the face, and then there was another that we had pitched and were exploring for a little while, that Vatic had left some part of her, in essentially like a plate or an altar that would have been positioned in front of the Borg Queen, so that the Borg Queen was sort of resonating through that, which was then communicating with Vatic. And so we kind of had a biological answer and a tech answer, but in the orchestration of the season, and especially those sort of final scenes, there was just never a place to stop down and give that explanation in a way that would have been both satisfying and wouldn't horribly have undercut the drama of the moment. So we do have various sort of explanations for how that's possible and why that was. But what we just didn't want to do is throw it into a scene and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's just shut the hell up and, destroy space dock already, or get to the really emotional heart of what that moment is. And so, I mean, there's always, the sort of trade-offs of in trying to build the most dramatically and emotionally resonant sequence that you can. Certain little bits like that fall by the wayside in terms of not having a perfect explanation. So
good. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I think that does explain it. So one of the other things that we had here was that, if you can walk us through the ending. Now, we know that Terry is credited for writing the final 2 episodes and also directing them, but we also know he credits everything towards the team. What was the thinking behind having 7 on the bridge of the Enterprise G, and why was Jack made special counselor to the captain as opposed to like comms or science or something else?
So Terry, absolutely is the vision behind, the finale of this. But, I think, and I've said this in the past, I think what Terry's superpower as a showrunner has always been is he really knows how to play the orchestra, right? Like he knows how to assemble a writer's room of really interesting, dynamic voices that are all wildly different from each other, and kind of learn how to sort of choreograph their skill sets. And so, when you look at all of these scripts, really not just the last 2 or the last one specifically, but all of them throughout the season, yes, every writer is credited with whatever script that they ended up taking ownership of. But there is a beautiful symphony of voices. Everybody's fingerprints are on every episode. There are, really wonderful lines in episodes that I'm credited with from other writers and vice versa. And so, we all really helped and supported and threw our, sort of voices and DNA into each of these scripts so that it felt consistent across the season, so that you never felt like one episode had a wildly different voice than another. And so Terry is particularly good at kind of learning which character, what kind of scene, et cetera, that each person does well, and then orchestrating that into the scripts that we ended up with. So to answer your question more specifically, honestly, the story of the Enterprise and offering that anew, because it's such a part of the last generation, really needs to be a part of the new generation. And so it thematically, it absolutely worked to have it be the Enterprise.
Chris, I got a couple of things here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, let him finish, please.
And then I was just going to say, and then, obviously 7 being captain of that is equally a no-brainer. That is her journey to the captaincy. And to answer your question about Jack has always been a jack of all trades for us, and so I think for us to have put him at any given station would in some ways have felt limiting, because if you're going to go do the legacy series where he's going to continue on, you want that guy on away missions. You want him, out there in the galaxy doing what Jack is so good at doing, at being a thief, at being a con man. And so to sort of redefine the term of counselor as in special counselor, as in, that really felt right and kind of the right place to put him. And so that's what we ended up deciding.
Awesome. Yes, it was great. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Hyperbolic Ninja has super chatted twice now, and he's asking the same question. So I feel like living up to his name, we got to answer this question for him. So for $5, and again for $5, just to reiterate, he says, who came up with the Worf falling asleep? It was beautiful and had me dying. And then he says again, I have to know, Chris, who came up with Worf falling asleep on the bridge?
Oh, dude,
that was great.
You paid $10, and I don't know the answer. I can't.
Michael Dorn just fell asleep.
I don't think it was in the script. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was a kind of a found moment on the day.
Michael Dorn just fell asleep.
Doesn't Michael Dorn do that sometimes, just on set?
Just not off.
I want to assume it was
A long
Terry
day.
or Michael kind of just came up with it in directing the sequence, but yeah, I don't think it was in the original script. I think it was an improv. So,
Oh, that's your answer.
Chris, can I ask? There was one moment in the last episode that I was a little bit one way or the other way on, which was,
Sure.
I think throughout the course of the season, I think the Titan took its pride of place as a hero starship in the same way as we love, obviously Voyager and the Defiant and everything. It earned that credibility as the hero ship of the season. And at the end of the show, when obviously it was rebranded, the Enterprise is like, oh, I like it, but I also felt that like it's sort of like if at the end of Voyager they have suddenly decided let's rename the Voyager the Enterprise. Like, oh no, hang on, that's the Voyager. That we've been on such a journey with the Titan throughout the course of the season. I was a little bit torn about that name change. I'd be interested to know what you guys actually thought of that as well. But can you tell us a little bit about that creative decision?
Yeah, I actually agree with this question, and I have to admit I really hoped they were renaming it the Picard when I was watching it for the first time.
And then the Picard series can keep going.
Okay, well, so let me. This is interesting because that originally was the thought, was to call it the Picard, so we had that thought in the room. That was the pitch on the table when we originally thought about what would the Titan be rechristened as. And then, as you go through the season and you start to write the scripts and you start to get a better sense really of what is the season about, it felt as if ultimately the honor needed to fall to the collective of the TNG crew, that it is not just about Picard as a character and his name, but the name of the ship that represents everything that we were trying to honor this season. And in some ways we felt that, because we had sort of gone on this journey with the Titan, and that it was also an honor for the Titan as well to sort of be sort of leveled up into the sort of flagship of the Federation. And so it was always meant and always intended to be a complement of the highest order. And in some ways, when you have, when the Titan has done what it has done, and to what is it ever going to do that's going to top that? So how do you evolve it into something new that can write a new history for the Federation and move forward by honoring the past and honoring all these wonderful characters that we've, who've saved the world so many times before, and whose last story we're telling? It felt like Enterprise was the right emotional way to do that. So.
Well, the Enterprise D is the one that the long lost D saved the humanity and the universe again.
Yes.
I mean, it's a great honor. I would have called it the Enterprise Double D, but that's just me.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
I would have loved it if awesome. earlier in the season when Riker and Picard were in the bar and they were all the Enterprise D models on the shelf and the bartender said nobody likes the fat one. Yeah. I would have loved it at the end if they were all sold out and it's like everybody loves the fat one.
They probably do now.
That would have been great. They're all sold out. We can't even get.
Just don't say they want the fat D.
Right.
Those are the memes going around. Yes.
Yeah.
Hiroshi the dog give 5 Popcast memberships. Thank you, Hiroshi. We are streaming to 2 different channels, my friends. So if you are on, you might be on the Unleashed channel, you might be on the Prime channel, but we are on 2 different channels. Okay, so we do have a super chat here. Can I pop this up real quick?
Go ahead.
That's cool with you guys. From Todd Fielding for $10. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for everything you did on Picard. I think he's talking to you, Chris.
Well, he's not talking to the rest of us. Yeah,
he's not talking to the rest of us. My question is, how likely do you think there is a Star Trek Legacy show? And I'm feeling, Chris, you're going to get that question a lot.
I think the answer is as it's hard to say. I mean, all of these things are math problems, right? Like that's ultimately what they boil down to. it's an amalgamation of ad revenue to numbers of people streaming to how often they stream to how long they stream. Like there is a business reality to a lot of this, and so it is very much an equation that people way higher than myself on the food chain are currently calculating. But I think it is certainly as likely as any other Star Trek show that you've seen come to fruition, because all of those shows, really are a response to the continued passion and love that the fans continue to show. And so, I think, the secret ingredient, the thing that you can't manufacture or interpret when trying to justify whether you're going to do a show like this, is the level of enthusiasm and passion that the audience will bring to it. Like that's usually an X factor. And what we absolutely know from our amazing fans and viewers is that they want this. So, that part of the equation that's usually murky at best is very, very clear. So if all the math and all the numbers, line up behind it, then certainly, I think it could potentially be likely that we would see Star Trek Legacy. But there's certainly no guarantees in this business. There's certainly no guarantees about if, let alone when. But we're here, and we're passionate about it. We want to tell more stories and continue to serve the fans. And there was really a specific assignment with this season that we tried to honor and a tone that we tried to capture. And it would be really interesting, I think, with this group of writers to continue to explore the 25th century and investigate all this sort of new corners of the world, and tell new stories that weren't kind of about how the past affects us. So, we're
good. That's such a good point. We want to get out into the universe, into the galaxy, and explore again. Like that's what Star Trek we feel is missing. A lot of fans say the same thing, and you guys have just set this show up so perfectly. But looking back one more time, do you guys realize that you, and this may have been intentional, you completely honored all of the legacy shows, and especially at the end, you did it right there with Pavel Chekhov and his son, right? Anton. Yeah. Was that his son, Anton?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It was his son officially. We did the math. We tried to figure out like 100 years, 120 years, would it work out, but it could work out for him to be the son.
It's a very old son.
Yes. Right. What was it like bringing Walter Koenig back? And was that something that you guys pre-planned, or did it just kind of happen naturally? Because I believe I heard he lives near Todd.
Yeah. I mean, it was a bizarrely happy accident was that he is, not next door neighbors, but like neighborhood neighbors with Todd Stashwick. And I remember before we even ever got to doing Star Trek, I think I was at Todd's house for D&D or something, and he came in and he was like, I think I just saw Chekhov walking his dog, like, and you're sort of kind of like an only in Hollywood kind of moment. So to have that be like, you can literally walk across the street and say like, hey, would you record some lines into an iPhone and do a kind of audio cameo was just, you couldn't pass it up. You had all the raw ingredients in front of you to make something meaningful. And so Terry figuring out a way to sort of take that relationship and sort of playfully build it into something that was not only just a really cool moment of sort of like in-universe continuity, but also you got to honor Anton, it was such a great idea.
Awesome.
We got a super chat from Oliver Laveria Farage. He says, also in the last episode, I was expecting President Anton Chekhov's phaser to be fired in the final act. Yeah, Terry did say maybe in the future we'll be able to get him on screen if there was more time,
Yeah, I mean, he's available and enthusiastic and was an amazing to be able to have him do that. So
awesome.
Yeah, Walter
JP.
is amazing. He's a friend of our show, and in fact, we're working with him currently to have him come and discuss some of the original series episodes that are his favorites.
Oh, that's awesome.
JP, you got a question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
To me or from me? My question is, I don't know if you were there that day that they shot, but when finally the entire cast of Enterprise D was in a room together having a meeting about what to do next, was there a special feeling going on set or amongst the cast or the crew?
I think it was they had all worked with each other in previous scenes at that point, and so you know there was a lot of like they'd all had their reconnections, but you know they'd all hung out backstage, they'd all had scenes together, not necessarily as a group, but so you know I think by the time they got around the table, the thing about that particular day that I noticed the most was just how unruly they are. It's like herding cats, right? Like they are so close, and they're so bonded, and they're also charismatic and funny and loud that it was really like, I think it wasn't so much that there was a sense of like, oh my God, this is special. It was a sense of like picking right up where they'd left off. It was like no time had passed. And so that was what was really cool about it, was it didn't feel like you were going to church. It felt like you were going to a poker game, you know, and that had never ended after 30 years. So it was very cool.
Well, watching it the moment snuck up on me, because they were probably all there around that table for a good, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute in the scene. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me like, oh, they're all together at once.
Yeah.
And then it started getting a little bit choked up. I'm like, oh, yeah, I wanted them together to figure out what to do for decades now. And it's finally happening.
Yeah, Terry said you guys filmed for 40 minutes, that last scene. He put a lot of film down.
Scene, yeah, just let the camera run and let it kind of like find the shots, and you know, it was probably a nightmare for our editors, but you know, it I mean, it paid off dividends. I mean, that scene is incredible, and you know, these people are genuinely friends. I mean, they genuinely love and care for each other, and joke and bicker and everything that a family does. Anything that two people or a group of people who've known each other for so long will inevitably do. But they're lovely human beings who love each other. And so you just point a camera at them for 45 minutes and let it roll, you're going to get gold. So,
Chris, was there any talking about that apart from the poker scene? Was there any moments throughout the season that were kind of came out of that ad-libbed relationship that everybody's got with each other, that just sort of happened on the set in the spur of the moment, that ended up in the show?
There's one I could think of, but I can't say it. We had a great moment that may or may not get included on the DVD, where Worf on the day we just sort of tried it, where Worf finishes Brent's limerick in a really hilarious joke, but really undercut the emotion of the scene. So didn't make the edit. But no, I mean, I think that there was a lot of really great, I mean, all the scripting, you know, the writers are really, and Terry and our editors are really tight. It's really purposeful, you know, to create all of the emotion and stuff. So you know, there was a lot of working with the actors. They were all very vocal about, in a great way, about sharing their thoughts about what their characters would say or how they would say certain things, and we were always very, very available to collaborate with them. And so there was a good amount of like character work that we would do with them, but usually everything was kind of so fine-tuned by the time you got to set that there wasn't a lot of like, you know, rapid fire improving, except on like the poker scenes or the table scene. So, you know, no, they're pros, man. Like they come prepared and they make the words sing. So,
because some of the lines came out so effortlessly, they almost felt like that last moment with Riker and Troy as Data was leaving the psychology session with Troy.
Still batshit, right?
Batshit. And the way Riker said, still batshit, and Troy kind of slaps him and said, "Oh, don't you know?" Yeah. That moment just felt so authentic, you know.
I believe that was scripted, but that totally might have been a Frakes improv. I don't know, but you know, that guy can make anything sound off the cuff and casual. He's a pro. He's a master. So.
Tell you, one of my favorite lines of the show is when Geordi brings up the E and Worf says, "That's not my fault."
That was not my fault.
And I thought that was a great way for you guys not to explore that, because the E might have its own story, right?
Yeah, it could. I mean, there's also sort of like different divergent canon explanations for what happened, or like in other media. So you don't want to like knight any one particular thing, but certainly the suggestion in other stories is that Worf may have had something to do with it finding its ending. So it was just a great gag, and we were able to kind of put it in there playfully. So,
well, staying on ships for just 1 second with the F. So the F was actually, we found out at the beginning of the season that it was going to be decommissioned thanks to Paramount Plus kind of spoiling that a little bit for us. What was the motivation for? I mean, because we could have had the F at the end instead. Is it that you wanted to show us the F and then have the G? What was the thinking in that process?
Because we knew we wanted the sense. We knew we were gonna want the G to be about growth, to be about evolving from your older self or your younger self into your older self. And so if that particular ship in its infancy and its youth was the Titan, and in its adulthood is the Enterprise, right? That there's a kind of like stepping into one's skin, and one sort of adulthood that you needed to do that with a ship that was previously called something else, and it made perfect sense for that to be obviously the Titan. So once we kind of figured out we wanted to do that, it made sense to then sort of say, let's suggest that the F is there, that it's meeting its sort of rightful end, and now is a time for a new iteration of the Enterprise that then the Titan can step into.
Oh, good answer.
Yeah.
Hey, can we talk about the paw race in the room real quick? From Tommy Tables. Thank you, Tommy. You guys did an amazing job, by the way. Did you guys intentionally do a paw wraith fake out before the big reveal? Red eyes, shimmering orange light, etc.
I don't think it was like specifically let's make them think it's the paw wraiths. I think if anything, it was let's not make them think it's the Borg, right? Like, it's like if it was green light, you'd have been like, yeah, okay, I see what you guys are doing.
Right.
So choosing red as the dominant color. I just think it was a little bit of a nod more than anything to the Red Forest of 12 Monkeys,
right?
And sort of red being the sort of iconic color of the sort of the ominous baddie coming down the pipeline. So it's an old favorite for me and Terry. So
were you ever afraid that the vines? Oh, good.
So when we finally got to the Borg cube in the finale, I likened the red eyes to being similar to Locutus's red laser sight.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I like that. Let's go with that.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. All right, JP's making Star Trek canon.
Nice. I was wondering if I didn't pick it up along the way, but were you ever worried that the vines would give away kind of the Borg? You know how the Borg kind of connect into all the different technologies, because that's what those vines are, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't mind if it. Okay, look, we don't want to hand you the answer on a silver platter, but the idea is like, how do we present enough information that sort of people, when they go back and they look at the season again, go, oh, that's what that was? Or, how many times do you have to mention transporters and transporter tech, before you've given it away versus teed it up, right? So it's always a balance. So that, what we tried to do was start with Borg circuitry, connections, wires, and then what's the analog version of that you could recontextualize, that when you go back, you realize are a metaphor for the Borg, but don't say Borg so loud that the audience is too far ahead, So, that's always the trick. It's not necessarily, it's a balancing act. Yeah, it's not intentional.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We got a question from Daniel Altamarina. Oh my God. Altamarina. Thank you. Daniel, thank you. How does it make sense that the Borg just let them in? I've heard that question a few times.
That's Borg 101. Don't they always do that?
Yeah.
They're not going to monologue over comms. No, I mean, I think that I think on some level you have to acknowledge that the Borg queen that you are facing and the Borg that you are facing have gone crazy over 30 years in the deep, in the dark. You know, she has heard what she refers to as her children, but really are, you know, hundreds of thousands of millions of aspects of herself slowly dying and dying and dying and dying and dying as the little biology that exists of her rots and fades and needs to be consumed and fed by other flesh. So this is a computer gone crazy by the time you've met them. And so I think that sense of revenge, that the Borg has never really had before, right? They've always had a plan, they've had a strategy,
right?
They've had an ideology, but this is hardcore revenge for them to steal the generation of the people that did this to them. And so I think when you think about it as the sort of primary circuit in a computer that's gone crazy, it wants its time to tell Picard why they're doing this and what they've taken. And then I think what she's not aware of is everything that's going on elsewhere, right? Like all the things that, and then, you know, to be fair, when they start mucking about, that is when the cube begins to fire and begins to defend itself and begins to push back. And so, you know, I think had they not had all the advantages on the other side of the story and had they not had a plan, you know, Picard absolutely would have died in there and the Borg would have succeeded. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up that question because there was a lot of people asking about the Enterprise going into the Borg cube. That is the one reason why I think what Chris says is really important. They didn't expect the giant ship to actually come into the Borg cube. That was not expected whatsoever. And when that happened and they started to defend themselves, I don't think they expected the Enterprise D, the big D, to
enter them,
to be capable of entering them so smoothly.
Oh my goodness!
This is you, Jimmy.
I feel HR writing a complaint against me as we speak.
But it's true though. Like people are like, why did the big D come into the Borg cube? Well, they needed to. They needed to make the trench run in there, and I don't think the Borg expected it. They didn't expect Data to even be able to get to pilot the ship inside the cube, which was
the crew didn't expect it either.
Yeah, neither the crew.
Yeah, she was supremely confident. The Queen was, and I think that's probably, you know, she was wrong. So she had Jack. What else was, you know?
She had Jack.
What was Picard gonna do?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of showcased in the episode that, I mean, yeah, she's mad now. She's basically in solitary confinement. She doesn't have the Borg connection anymore, and the science has proven and studies have proven solitary confinement will make you crazy.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
she's a Borg queen that would not open the shuttle bay doors.
Yeah,
I tell you that.
Yeah, exactly.
And last question about the Borg here, Chris. For now, at least, are the Borg gone? Is this it?
I think certainly the intention is that the Borg, as we traditionally know them, are gone. The thread from last season, I think, is there for folks to pick up. That sort of more nomadic, well-intentioned offshoot of the Borg exist. But the traditional Borg, as we know them in the context of TNG, this is their swan song. And wow, so, nice. You know, if they come back, I'll be very curious to see, you know, who and how they do it. So,
and I love that because I remember saying that to Shane before I almost spoiled the entire season during one of our live shows. I've been wanting a conclusion to the Borg since like Voyager. I've been wanting to finally finish up what happened to the Borg, and the other two seasons of Picard kept touching on it, but it was like just sort of teasing, you know, not actually telling me what happened to the Borg. And this feels like a conclusion to, in my opinion, one of the greatest villains of TV history. So,
yeah, and a good conclusion. We didn't want to erase
the greatest villain in all of narrative, televised, or filmatic.
Yeah, I agree.
We didn't want to erase what season 2 had done either. You know, I mean, that was the trick when we were really kind of narrowing in on this is our story and how we were going to treat it. You know, I think it was suggested at one point, quite possibly by me, you know, that to tie it all up in a neat, pretty bow, that the thing that was about to come through the tunnel that the Girardi Collective was warning about in season 2 would have been the Borg cube from this season, so that you could have gone back, right, if you wanted to that the edge of space where the Girardi Collective is guarding the tunnel, and have that fucking huge cube come out,
gigantic,
and destroy, everything that had been guarding and monitoring.
Right.
But at the same time, I think what season 2 did really interestingly, in a way that I think can be contributory to Star Trek moving forward, is to suggest that there's now an offshoot of the Borg, or something that is Borg-like, that really does exist in an altruistic sense of collective, not enslavement, but a sort of communal, like, what is the sort of like Flowers and Roses hippie commune version of the Borg look like? What would the sort of pirate Tortuga community of Borg that offers its technology to folks out there who may be adrift or dying, or may choose to enter into it and not give up their all of their free will? There's something interesting about that. And so we didn't want to erase that off the face of Star Trek canon. It's certainly there for someone to pick up in the future and try to do something interesting with. But certainly the Borg, as we know them from our childhoods, are gone.
All right.
Well,
I love that.
Thank you.
From Anka O for $22. Love Shaw as a captain in a spin-off series on a new ship. He is, for me, the new Kirk. He makes mistakes but knows to solve. The power is that he shows as human. Is that style also considered to continue in other characters? I think what he's talking about is that human fallacy error, but then the almost honorable side that a lot of humans can share. The vulnerable yet powerful human.
I mean, I think that's what Star Trek is ultimately about, right? It's about flawed, vulnerable, imperfect people who on a daily basis find themselves witnessing the awe-inspiring. And how does that change you? And what does that demand of you? And how does that elevate you? And that is the drama of Star Trek in general. How does the wonders of space, and for all its challenges and all its unknowns, inspire these crews that set off into it to be their best selves, to work with each other, to accept each other, to set aside petty differences and work together for greater goods? Like, that's Star Trek, at its core. And so I think Shaw is representative of that. I think Shaw, for very understanding human psychological and emotional reasons, had a reaction to Seven, where he was not able to bridge that gap to her, and over the course of the season learns her value and learns that her name is not representative of something that once traumatized him, but is instead representative of all the trauma that she, through her own strength, championed herself over and fought through and sort of came to own. That is a very Star Trek story, I think.
Yes,
I agree.
And I love how you guys at the end with Tuvok, and she got her officer review, and that took place before the events of the series. Like, that happened just before. And I think that was so critical to show that Seven, he wasn't blinded by what he learned about Seven. Seven was already capable before this started. And totally. I thought that was really great that you guys did that.
Totally. And that was, that is absolutely, I think in the original version of the script, I don't know if it was stated when, it was just that at some point between the beginning of the season and the end of the season, he sent off this particular recommendation, and ultimately, I think what I think it was Terry who suggested it first, and we all came around to was, it's actually better if he knew her value before he arced, right? Like he came to understand her value by the end and grew closer to her, but as a captain, purely as an officer on a ship, was able to put his own bullshit to the side and understand her virtues as an officer, and then grow to understand them as a person over the course of the series, speaks quite a lot about it. So
yeah, you elevated both characters in the same scene, and that's so hard to do. It elevated both Shaw and Seven. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
You guys
also real quick, I'll say some of his speech about Seven is exciting because it lets us imagine a possible future for Star Trek that is led by Seven of Nine.
Yeah,
which sounds incredibly exciting to me as a fan.
I mean, when Rafi says to Seven, like, a thief, a pirate, and a spy, who would have thought? I mean, I don't think you can get a better pitch for what the next season or when the next show could be.
That was the pitch.
Then I mean, that last sequence on the bridge of the Enterprise is, I mean, that's the show, right? Like, I don't think we need a better sort of like backdoor pilot into what that's going to be.
Now, was that intended to be a pitch to CBS?
No, I mean, I think it's just an extension of like, that's who those three people are, right? I mean, you got to acknowledge that, he's definitely a criminal, or was at one point, and she was a spy, and, Seven used to be essentially a space pirate.
That's funny.
And so, roguishness is in all of their DNA. So
there you go, Star Trek Rogue. I'm ready.
Okay, guys, I got an idea for you. Imagine a thief, a pirate, and a spy on board the new Enterprise G.
Right.
Yeah. They all walk into a 10 forward.
Green light.
Yeah, I'll take it. Son of John for $10. I appreciate yours and the management for allowing Terry's story to come to light. Christopher, you say that Paramount is looking in the future for more of Terry's stories. Is that like 2, 3, 5, 8 years? Before you answer, don't be specific, but are you going to work on something coming up? Are you leaving CBS? Are you working on Disney stuff or whatever with Terry?
No, I mean, look, I think Terry and I have worked on 12 Monkeys. We've worked on this. We've developed, other things that have, not for one reason or another seen the light of day. And we'll continue to work together, on whatever either he has coming up next or whatever ideas that we drum up and manage to sell together. So there are a lot of exciting conversations about future projects that I think we're really hopeful that we'll be able to team up on again. And I think Legacy, it continues to be, the sort of top of the pyramid of hopes for what those things could be. But we've reached the point where it's out of our hands. It's in the hands of the fans to keep asking, and it's in the hands of the studio and the network to decide it's something they want to explore. So until they do that, it continues to be kind of us fanficking our own show together, and then hopefully one day it can be a reality. So
they're going to keep asking, Chris, because
they hope so.
They asked Todd the same thing, and he said, "Listen, if Terry's sounds the horn of Gondor, I'll be there."
Well said.
All right.
What else we got, Brian?
Yeah, we got a couple comments too. 200 Watt Studio for $2. Thank you, 200 Watt. Chris, thank you for retconning the Enterprise finale.
Ooh, we didn't talk about this. Yeah,
you never thought about it that way. So you're welcome.
Yes, a lot of people were happy about that, for real.
Yeah, I guess there's sort of a retcon there. And didn't really see it that way, but all right. That's an interesting comment. Thank you, 200 Watt.
Us Enterprise fans will take it any way we want. Right,
sure.
Yeah.
You guys want to come back and do Enterprise next? Finish that series? That'd be great.
Chris, the Temporal Wars. I'm just saying. Right. I'm going to keep putting it out there. It
just
happens around this time.
All Archer all the time.
20th century. Yeah. All right. From Goron. Wow, I can't say this guy's name. Uh-huh. Is that Goron Falf?
Well, Faith or Falf, one of the two.
You got a really cool name, Goron. You sound like a guy from D&D.
He's been with us for a while. He's a good guy.
Thank you, Chris, for being part of bringing back the characters of TNG and giving them a proper send-off.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Goron.
Yeah, thank you.
And then also from Good Tea, Nice House, with 36 years of the TNG characters, we tend to forget the entire bridge crew lost a parent or was an orphan. Picard Season 3 added new depth and got to showcase more edge and complexity. Well done.
Thank you, Good Tea.
Yeah, love that. That's what we wanted to do. We wanted to evolve it and make it more complex, but still be Trek. So.
Chris, I felt there was far more levity in the writing for season 3 than perhaps the previous season. Was that a conscious choice, or did that just sort of flow naturally out of the characters? Because there's some real awesome, particularly I think with Riker's character, he had so many great one-liners this season, and I think that levity was just lifted the show and was a real key ingredient in what made the season so great.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that's so as a writer's room, you could not have found a funnier group of people. I mean, like to just spend an hour in that room, it's like a joke a minute. I mean, we've got great, charismatic, really funny, great, talented writers in that room. So, to have all the opportunity for humor was kind of baked in already, not just with those characters, but with the folks who were writing them. Whereas I think like season 2, for example, the story that Akiva was really trying to tell in season 2 was a much more earnest, psychological, kind of dark. It wasn't particularly optimistic about where we are today in society. It was dealing with some very dark things in Picard's past, and so there wasn't a lot of opportunity to be as kind of funny as I think we are naturally wanting to gravitate toward as a room. And so we were just able to do that this season and kind of had the freedom to write these characters the way that we wanted to. So,
and I will make it a threesome. Yeah. So
words are fun.
It was so serious at that moment too. I'm like, ordinarily in a show like that's really like having like this, ultimate moment, and then to have that kind of levity work. I look back on it and go, that just works, even though it's so serious. Yeah. Good job.
It's also, we were fortunate that I think we were like 5 scripts in when production started. So we were kind of writing the last half as we were seeing the fruits of our labors kind of on the first half. And so it's like, there's things you can adjust to, like you learn quickly that, Michael's really funny. Like Worf can be a funny character, and so once you realize like those chops are there, you're like, oh, well, I can write to it. I can write more jokes in for Worf, or we can be on set and like you can say like, hey, try this or whatever, and he'll give it a swing and he'll make it work. So you can start to bespoke lines to each individual actor. So
really well done.
Yeah, from Dusty Nerdy and talking about headcanon. Chris, was there an idea to keep the Enterprise D in service, offer the command to Riker, and maybe be refitted with a third nacelle?
No, it was always, it belongs in a museum, right? I mean, like the idea was always to refurb it from, the damage it took at the height of the finale, and to get it back in good sort of refurbished order and to put it out there for people to see in Geordi's museum and let it rest there and sleep peacefully. So no, that was never considered.
Would the ship have a gift shop?
Chris, can you tell us anything about the fact that the set has been saved and put in the it's been saved somehow, hasn't it? It hasn't just been scrapped at the end of the season.
I believe that's true. I don't know to what end they'll end up using it. I don't know. I'm sure at some point, it may come back together for some sort of experience. It'd be amazing to allow, folks to spend some time on that set, sit in those chairs, take pictures, be able to share in the experience that we all had, being able to walk around on it. But
give it to the Smithsonian.
But I don't know. I don't know where it'll ultimately end up or how it'll be used. I'm just glad that they did save it and they can put it they can put it to good use at some point. So
yeah, Joey for $10 says, "Who got custody of the bridge set?" Your answer was
it's in my living room. I got the whole thing. It's great.
Yeah, I would sleep there if California has squatter rights. So if you guys ever bring it to California, like it'll just be mine eventually.
Yeah, so. It's smaller than you think. It's like a studio apartment at best.
I'm smaller than you think. All I'm saying.
Not true.
Not true. We got a question from 200 Watt Studio. Chris, if you do have a Beverly and Jean-Luc together, please don't turn the camera off to see Laura sitting in the room in the corner.
Hilarious. Or
poor Laris.
You don't know what kind of you don't know what Beverly and Jean-Luc are into. So Maybe that works for them.
Threesome. Yeah, there you go.
The camera turns on. I'm here.
Well, she is a watcher. Laris's ancestor was a watcher.
She's a watcher.
Remember season 2?
Oh my God,
she was a watcher.
Yeah, but she just likes the Wheel of Fortune. She's a wheel watcher.
All right. From Son of John for $10. On 4/21, Fox's Alex Mickelson talked with Alex Kurtzman, mentioned legacy, and Alex said, anything is possible. He ended saying more story to tell, so we'll see. And then this is the trick question, just to be.
Yes.
What are the meetings like?
Look, I wish I was in those meetings. Those meetings right now are taking place in boardrooms where we are not currently sitting in. So, I know Terry has ideas. I know Terry has talked to Alex, and Alex has been very supportive in trying to find a path forward. Creatively, what that path will be and what those stories will be, still TBD. So. We'll see.
Yeah, I get from his like body language and kind of the way because he did say he recognizes that he's hearing the fans because the fans are being very loud. I think he's kind of in this place where he's stuck. He's committed himself to these other projects and they can only do so many things. And I think, it feels to me like there's a lot of potential and possibility that we could go forward with something, but they're going to need time to figure out, is that a mini series? Is that an actual series? But it does feel to us anyways that something positive is coming. So
I certainly hope so. I mean, it's a big machine, right? I mean, like, these things are not cheap. They are, they do cost money. So it's like you can't just have 5 series, of expensive TV, on the air at once. And so, they clearly have Section 31 and Star Trek Academy coming down the pipeline. And I think those will be for their respective formats, they're going to be terrific, and they'll be visual and exciting and amazing, and big spectacle, great sci-fi Trek TV. And so, you can't. It's even if everybody woke up tomorrow and said we're all on the same page, yes, we have to go greenlight Legacy. There is a lot of considerations, financial, logistical, practical, contractual. All these things have to get worked out, so it takes time. But we're here, we want to do it, and we're game whenever it's time to blow the horn of Gondor, and we'll all come running from over the hills.
That's what we want to hear. Are you Legolas or are you
the offices of Santa Clarita? We shall go.
We got
offices of Santa Clarita.
A couple of super chats that have something to do with that. Hiroshi the dog says Captain 7 equals gold pressed latinum. And I agree with that, Hiroshi. Thank you so much.
You,
and T. Stoney says, make Shaw 7's chief engineer, and my headcanon is emergency engineer hologram.
Now, here's the thing, though. Now, okay, counter question, because I've seen this a lot, right? Like emergency hologram. If that's what it was, would you feel like, oh, yeah, they kind of just did the thing I thought they'd do? Or would you be fully satisfied and engaged and be like, that's awesome. That's what I wanted them to do. I'm glad they did.
Well, that's a great question, Chris.
I don't see a reason why Shaw would be turned into a hologram. I would actually, it would cost money, though. I'd like to see a young Robert Picardo reprise the role. Just gotta make him younger looking so he could be a new version, the original program, not the actual Doctor that we know from Voyager, but it would cost some money, and that makes it harder to do.
I would be extraordinarily satisfied to bring him back, really, in any way. Like if you brought him back as a EEH, I guess.
Yeah.
That would be cool. It would be harder to bring him back for real. Like, you're alive again, to explain that out. I guess they could, but I would be satisfied with that. I just want more Shaw. I want more of that character, especially the sarcasm.
Yeah. We do know that the Starfleet, the place where they keep all the hidden stuff, what's it called?
Yeah. Daystrom Station.
Daystrom Station. Had Kirk's body in there. It obviously had Picard's. body kept in there, so there's no reason why they couldn't, just tuck Shaw's body away in there for some reason.
Well, it also has the Genesis 2 device. So my thought was, true. Hey, that's how we get Shaw back.
Genesis.
The search for Shaw, right? Not the search for Spock, the search for Shaw.
I can tell you that if we were to do it, the trick is how do you make it emotional? That's the trick for every story. It's right. So what you don't want to do is, the first shot is everybody walks onto the bridge, then Holoshaw flickers into existence, is like reporting for duty.
Reporting for duty.
The easiest thing in the world in a sci-fi context to, bring a character back from the dead. I mean, you can do it. There's a million ways to do it. The story that I think, we would be looking for is how do you make it emotional? How do you make it meaningful? So that there is feeling and drama around that character. And so that if it is a hologram or if it is some sort of other Genesis device or temporal, whatever, or blah, 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 whatever science fiction sort of grab bag you reach into, that, you're ultimately telling a really personal human story with that character over, however many episodes you're lucky enough to get. So it's not just about the way you bring them back, it's how you bring them back. So
guys, I know the way I'm going to do it. Well, I'm going to say real quick, the one way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to go watch 12 Monkeys. I've never seen it.
Yeah. You need to watch that.
Have you never seen 12 Monkeys?
That's the movie a million times, but never the series.
I say that as if I'm like surprised. Like, have you never seen 12 Monkeys? And yet, until recently, we're lucky that a lot of Trek folks have gone and revisited it, and it's got a kind of second life from devoted Trek fans we're deeply appreciative of. But I say that as if you could have said that to a room and everyone would have been like, no. We had a really amazing, passionate, but small audience of folks who loved and supported that show that we're deeply, deeply appreciative seems to be growing. So I think you'll like it. I hope you will. So
I think Picard is like you're saying, Picard is bringing the audience there because I was loving the character of Shaw, and I'm like, oh, he's in 12 Monkeys. I want to go watch that, but then I was like, I'm gonna wait until after the finale because I don't want to hold two characters in my head at the same time.
Yeah, we were so lucky to be able to do that series, and to evolve. 12 Monkeys, and Terry says it all the time, the first season of 12 Monkeys in a lot of ways is the pilot to the show that follows. And then and then in season 2, it just starts to really sort of become who we are collectively as writers. Me, Terry, Sean Tretta, who also worked on Picard this season. We're very proud of that show. And it means the world to us that folks continue to support it and seek it out and try to find it. And so I would love to hear, what you think if you check it out, because I think if folks like the sentiment and the spirit and the emotion of Picard and the sort of overall feeling that it evokes in them, then they would enjoy 12 Monkeys. So
yeah, the DNA feels just the same. I mean, you can tell it's like the teams are the same. So with the way you guys brought it, it's almost like 12 Monkeys, almost like watching Star Trek a little bit. Mm-hmm. You've got the command, right? They go on away missions. They're traveling through time. It's fantastic. You need to watch.
Well, I'm all about supporting the creators that you like. By the way, shout out to Kit Stolen, who's not only a concept artist for Picard, but also a concept artist for The Orville. So you got a little connection there. Always looking for that connection between Star Trek and the Orville. But I plan on checking out a lot more of Terry's work and Todd's work, and if Patrick Stewart wants to make something, I'll probably watch that too.
But please do. And if you watch it, let me know. I hope you enjoy it. So
I will.
So speaking of, I'm sorry, real quick. I'm not gonna go harp on this, but remember, everyone, Shaw did not die on screen.
Oh man.
Okay.
Just remember that.
He didn't die 7 put him on ice. I got you. Okay.
The hope you have.
Maybe 7 injected him with some Borg nanoprobes or something out of
maybe
off frame, and they've regenerated his heart or whatever.
This is never going to end.
They can put his head in a jar, and he can make a cameo on Futurama.
Let the poor man be dead. Let him leaving the audience.
I refuse.
I will say there was an actor on another series I've heard this story secondhand, so I will not say who the actor was. But there was another actor on another series whose character died, and the actor refused to close their eyes in the close-up of their body because they were like, if I close my eyes, I'm dead. So if I just don't close my eyes, you guys can bring me back. And they were like, no, we're killing you. You're dead. You're never coming back. He's like, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to keep. They had to CG close his eyes.
Wow.
That thankfully is not Todd Stashwick. He's happy to die on cue if we ask him nicely. So
right.
3, 2, 1, and die.
we got a super chat from Jake Soley of 6 and 9. Thank you, Jake. I understand that there were budget issues, but I think Seven's promotion would have been much more heartfelt if Janeway was there. I think maybe you weren't here earlier, but Chris did explain that it makes more sense for Tuvok. And I think you're right, Chris. It would have felt hollow if she just popped on screen for 30 seconds. But
we needed Tuvok. Okay, so we had Plato Tuvok, right, earlier in the show.
Yeah,
which was interesting.
Tuvok. We needed to see he lived and survived, right? And Janeway is in Prodigy, so you kind of have this whole thing where she's doing that thing, and I think it's difficult. Even Terry said something to the effect of it's difficult to figure out, how does she fit in this universe? I mean, her name was brought up multiple times. Chris, you can tell us.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important to as a fan sometimes ask yourself when you have thoughts like that. Like Janeway is the bigger, more mythic, right? She's the captain of her own ship. So in the legacy and lexicon of Star Trek, Janeway is like a bigger figure than maybe Tuvok, right? Like just in terms of where she sits in people's minds. But emotionally, she wouldn't have been the right person to pass that baton on, right? Like Tuvok and Seven were a very different but very similar. Like, all throughout that particular series, and were in some ways the outsiders of their own group. And so it is emotionally right for it to have been Tuvok who sort of blessed to move forward Seven in her career. Whereas
I agree.
Janeway would have been cooler, maybe. Like, she comes on screen, you're like, hey, I know her. She's from the other thing. Like, she would have had more sort of like immediate recognition, but just because they're higher up on the call sheet or even in the hierarchy of does not necessarily mean that they are emotionally the right. Same way that like we could have done another villain than the Borg and it wouldn't have been the right choice. So it's like even if it is, I don't know, sort of like not what all of fandom would necessarily say they want in the moment. You have to still owe them the right choice for the scene, and so that for us was Tuvok. So.
Well said. Well, Mark has to leave, so I want to go ahead and Mark. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm a party pooper.
No, it's okay. I know you're on the road, and I just want to say, if you guys haven't been over to the Shuttlepod show, we'll have a link down in the description for you guys to check it out. Mark, can you tell us what you guys are doing next over there?
Yeah, if you missed Todd Stashwick, we just had him on this Sunday. It was an amazing conversation. And then this week we're going to have Jonathan Frakes, who I'm sure will be another amazing conversation. And I plan to nerd out just as much with Jonathan as I did with Todd. So.
Really great. Thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate you.
Kill Todd. They do kill Todd on the podcast, though. So, fair warning.
Yeah.
You guys are that.
Todd.
But don't fall in love with them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark, and we'll definitely have you back on.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm sorry I couldn't get more involved with the conversation with how loud it is back here, but it was amazing to meet you. I so appreciate
Likewise, thank you, sir.
What you had to say and your hard work. And
thank you.
Y'all are awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Speaking of awesome.
Was he drinking cocktails through all of that?
I believe so. Yeah.
At a bar.
I was wondering that. Yes.
Right.
So
very exciting. Good for him.
Yeah. Good. We had a question from T and Toys. Thank you, T and Toys. If there is a ship name and story behind the Romulan BOP at the museum, all this focus on Enterprise E. Also, would you ever want to show the story behind the Enterprise B?
Okay.
Interesting. No, I mean, I think look in in a perfect world, I'd love to tell stories of every Enterprise ever. But I think I think we've chosen to tell the stories of the ships that we feel are relevant to the time and place within Star Trek lore that we're operating in. So.
Was the Bird of Prey I think the Bird of Prey was just like, it's just one of those classic Star Trek ships, and that why it was in the museum specifically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Was there a lot of discussion or anything about the ships that were part of the Fleet Museum in terms of ones that people wanted in there that didn't make it or anything like that?
Well, I know that Terry, Terry felt that there were a few specific ones that we needed to kind of see in there, but then, you can't. They're the biggest Star Trek nerds are not the ones in the writer's room. They're the ones in the production offices whose job is to just populate the world with like all the little details like that you can freeze frame and expand and look at every ship and go, oh my God, this class, that ship, from this piece of lore, from that piece of lore. They know Star Trek far better than we ever will. And so they are heroes of canon and mythology and lore. And so, they are as involved in sort of carefully crafting all the little sort of Easter eggs and minute details as Terry is. So
awesome. That's awesome. Good super chat from Joe over at Star Trek Late Night. Our friend Joe. Good tea, drink up. That's it. Thank you, Joe.
He wasn't drinking tea, Joe. He was drinking beer.
Yeah. To follow that up from El Presidente Camacho.
Thank you, Camacho.
Drinking beer glasses. Thank you, President Camacho.
Everybody's drinking but us, guys. Come on. It's like 8 a.m. for Nick, so he's like, no, forget about it.
Yeah.
We had a question from the Lock for $5. Rather than renaming the Titan, was there any discussion or desire to design and introduce a new flagship Enterprise G?
No, I think as we were saying, it really was about passing the torch from the Titan's sort of like adolescence into its adulthood, leveling it up into something that would carry forward the iconic status of the Federation's flagship. And so, we didn't want to do something completely new. It felt like it had earned its battle scars, and it had earned a promotion as well. So.
And I think for the people who were suggesting maybe the ship wasn't big enough to be like the flagship, it did undergo refit. So we don't know what bells and whistles were added to the Enterprise G from the Titan. It does look like the same vessels similarly, but it might have a lot more upgrades that would make it more of a flagship, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And it's also, I think, if Star Trek has proven anything, it's not the ship, it's the crew. The scrappiest and smallest of ships can be capable of the greatest results. So, it's God, I want to avoid a size matters joke, but you can't. You just kind of step into it. But yeah, so I think that's the spirit of it.
It's how well it functions. All right.
Look what the bounty did. The bounty saved the entire civilization.
Right. You guys started this. This is your problem. Hey, we got
I'm just being quiet right now. I'm just being quiet because I got so many perverted puns in my head.
Right now. I keep looking at your face though, and they're coming to me as
we
can
see.
Well, I'm sending them to you. I'm communicating to you with my Borg implants.
Thank you.
From Arjun. He actually asked a question a lot of people had a question about. Can you confirm that O'Brien was running around engineering, making everyone work during the finale?
Yeah, in any given shot, O'Brien is 2 inches to the left, and you've just never seen him. He was actually in the show. We wrote him all through 10 episodes. We edited him out. Totally cut him out. Right. Just didn't have time.
O'Brien is in all of us, if you believe.
No, he is absolutely one of the characters we would love to check in on at some point in Trek Future. He was I was a big fan of his character, and I would love to wonder and find out what he's doing now in the Trek universe.
Yeah, I was surprised how many people kept bringing Barclay's name up. Everybody kept wanting to see Barclay.
The questions we got throughout the entire series was Barclay and Miles O'Brien. Yeah, are they coming? We're like, we can't answer you, and I really, really wanted to tell them no.
Guys, we've heard you. There's a list somewhere. I'm sure we'll get around to it if they allow us to get around to it. So,
We need to create a top 10 of all the people like that they would have wanted in. Do it like a poll or something.
Yeah, I kind of thought at one stage the face was going to turn out to be Wayun from
It's
DS9.
interesting. Like the number of people who all the things they thought it would be, and it was interesting to us knowing what it was to then go, wow, some people like think this thing is going to be a really deep cut, and just being like, man, I hope they're not disappointed,
That's Star Trek fans.
Well, I was on team conspiracy slugs for almost the entire season. I was like the whole conspiracy going on with the changelings, who's with us, who's not. I'm like, this is so reminiscent of the episode Conspiracy from season 1.
Yeah, and that episode was left wide open too. Remember, they sent a signal somewhere in the depths. Yeah,
and I was like, and people were like, "Oh, it's the changelings coming." I'm like, it could be both. Having an axis of evil.
Well, wasn't the explanation for, you're talking about the bugs that got in their heads, right?
Yeah.
So wasn't the explanation that they kill their hosts and you guys didn't want to deal with
Terry,
that, Chris?
Yeah.
So you couldn't use those guys for that.
Yeah, you didn't want to kill them all off.
Well, they could still be in. I was thinking maybe the slugs took over the changelings once I saw the changelings.
Oh, double cut deep. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I go double D when I can.
Here we go.
Stop it.
From Ruse 321, Shaw's recommendation for 7 ties in perfectly to his behavior in the beginning. He was so angry because not only did she undermine his recommendation by just disobeying orders, but also was jeopardizing her own career.
Yeah, I mean, he had placed so much faith in her, and she was inadvertently kind of stepping on her own feet because he knows what he had already recommended for her anyway. So
yes, that makes more sense now, actually.
I mean, that's why his attitude was that way, because he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Well, look, Yeah, and on that same note, from Marcus Quintus for $5. Also, we love Shaw and Todd more and more every episode, and made his death hurt all the more powerful, and his last words to 7 so poignant.
Yeah, I mean, he really sells that. I mean, he'd seen beautifully, and offers to 7 the thing that sort of symbolizes her greatest achievements and the sort of achievement of all the strength she's ever had to muster to be who she is and overcome what she's overcome. And so, he in just a few seconds of screen time, he was able to communicate all of that. So, I mean, hats off to Todd for being as great as he is. So.
Yeah, they're very close too. They, Jerry really likes Todd a lot too, and they're close. So,
yeah, they bonded immediately, like just immediately.
Awesome.
Yeah, Todd's great. I remember when we went to go interview him, I was trying to tell Shane, I'm like, you understand, I don't remember his name, but I've seen him in everything. And he's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, when we got him on 12 Monkeys, I was, I think, most recently familiar with him from a stint he did on Justified, which is a favorite show of mine. And he's been on things as far back as, I remember he did Aaron Sorkin's Studio 60. He had a small role in one of those episodes. Like, I was very familiar with him as like a that guy. You're like, oh, that guy. And now, he's such a dear friend. But not only that, he's such a phenomenally talented actor that he's just like he should be the most famous person in any show that he gets. So,
well, I have to say there's something non-explainable about him where, when we first meet him, I'm like, God, he's so rude to Picard. He was rude to 7. And I was like, what a jerk. But something tells me I should like this guy. Mm-hmm. And I can't explain it.
Well, that's Todd.
I did like him.
He just exudes a likability no matter how much of a dick he's going to be.
Well, he's really good at playing that role.
We have a question from Anthony
Vano.
I
should just let you just do it. So much more fun.
Picard season, thank you, Anthony. Picard season 3 was TNG finale I dreamed of since Nemesis's bitter taste. And that's true. I feel the same way, Anthony. For Enterprise G sequel, do you prefer episodic or serialized format possibility?
Good question.
I would imagine you have to ask Terry this, but I think we would certainly be a little bit more episodic than we've been. I mean, I think we do like, I think it's just in our sort of like storytelling DNA. We do like the idea that like every season is a little bit of its own novel. It has a little bit of a through line. But even 12 Monkeys, which is a heavily serialized show, every episode usually had its own identity. It was its own mission of the week. We're going to go to a particular timeline, whether it's like World War II or whether it's, Prohibition era or whether it's the far future or wherever, and sort of execute a mission there. And so I would imagine it would be some hybrid of one-off, episodic with a little bit of a kind of a season-long through line that we would follow. That's if it were, say, like a 10 or 12 episode, show. If it was something smaller, then the format might change. But I mean, I think the idea of we want to visit and create enemies, we want to see and create new planets. I think that's something that we would absolutely want to have the freedom to explore.
Getting back to the boldly going aspect of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, I think fans are hungry for it. I mean, I was not super excited about all the serialization. But then Strange New Worlds, of course, brought back the episodic nature of Star Trek. But this serialized story that was told in Picard season 3, I was hanging on every frame. It was wonderful. It just worked out so well. I wished I had a time machine so I can fast forward to the next week's episode every Thursday.
It was like a movie.
Interesting, I think we're in an era of Trek now where it's important for fans and creators and everybody who's involved in the Trek conversation to allow for the fact that there is going to be some Trek that is not for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. Like it is not, if you don't like Discovery for whatever reason, you don't like Discovery, there's Picard. If you don't like Picard for whatever reason, you don't like Picard, there's Prodigy. The ones that we have talked about a lot in the context of the current Trek show are the OG series, TOS and TNG. And really at the time that either of those series had come out, there was only Star Trek, right? Like, Star Trek was the only Star Trek when Kirk was the captain, right? And by the time Picard was captain, you could really only compare that to the only other Star Trek show, and even TNG was trying to do its version of what TOS had done before it. But now, as you move on and you get Deep Space Nine, right? And then Deep Space Nine clearly has some inspirational roots in what Battlestar becomes. You get Voyager, you get Enterprise, then you get all these other sci-fi shows that have come along. You now have a whole generation of people that view Star Trek through the lens of other science fiction, right? So, you'll get someone who loves Star Trek but wants to tell a Star Trek story through the lens of Rick and Morty. So you get Lower Decks. You've got someone who wants to tell a Star Trek story through the lens of old school TNG, Voyager. You get us, and so you've got all these great creators who all love Star Trek and what Star Trek means, but they're presenting it through a filter of influences that there are far more of than there ever was back when Star Trek was new. So, if you like serialized storytelling, great. Tune into us. If you hate it, great. Watch Strange New Worlds. Like, it's not it doesn't have to be a contest. You know what I mean? It is great that Star Trek right now is presenting a very wide umbrella for people who don't have to like all of it. You can just find the pieces that work for you and that speak to you and your preferences, your sense of humor, your sense of drama, whatever, without saying that the other stuff sucks. Because the other stuff matters to somebody too, And
so I always tell somebody, I'm like, if you don't like Discovery, it has fans. There's people that like it and connect with it, and I think I've kind of echoed exactly what you're talking about. That there's a different Star Trek for every type of fan at this point.
Yeah.
I love what you said too, Chris, about through the lens of that creator. So, being a Star Trek fan first and then saying, because Lower Decks is a very Rick and Morty thing, and there is this whole different idea that Star Trek can exist, in different ways. And so, for me personally, as long as there's a Star Trek legacy and Star Trek in the 25th century moving forward, I'm going to be super darn happy about Star Trek. So hopefully that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. What I hear when fans say we want legacy is, or I should say what I don't hear when I hear fans say that we want legacy is I don't hear, I hate Discovery. I don't like Prodigy. I don't like this. All I hear is, I like what you're doing. That's working for me.
Right.
What you think about the other parts of Star Trek doesn't need to be a part of that conversation. Those things exist. They exist for the people that find meaning in them, that find themselves in them. I mean, you could say whatever you want about whatever social agenda you think Discovery may or may not have. But if one person feels seen by Discovery, if one person tunes into Discovery and finds themselves reflected there as the captain of a ship or the first officer of a thing as a hero, then that show is totally worth having done. Regardless of whether other people in Trekdom, whether that's their thing, it's fine if it's not. Go find the thing that's yours. I think we can have these conversations in celebration of and not to the exclusion of each other. So I think it's a wide umbrella, and it's here to invite everybody in and to foster a sense of community and discovery and curiosity and acceptance. And if we can, all angle the conversation that way, I think we'll all be a lot better.
Right.
Well,
and
so
ultimately,
we're never letting you go.
Nice.
We're
Well
never
said.
Yeah. Ultimately, the more popular things, like the more things that more people are watching are going to be the direction that we hope they go in.
Right.
So speaking of Son of John for $4.99. So if the fans are being heard, then we need to increase the volume. Let's rent out some billboards, especially Times Square. Thank you.
That was the coolest billboard ever. Thank you, Son of John. The one with the D's coming in and parking. I'm like, oh my God, it was gorgeous.
That was super rad.
Don't go buying billboards. Those are very expensive. Don't. Twitter is cheaper. It's easier.
Yeah. Well, I think the fans were heard when they had a big cry out for a Pike series. Once they met the new Captain Pike, they're like, okay, maybe not digging the whole show. Maybe I am, but I know that I like Pike. So give us more Pike. And it took a little while. They had to figure out what it was going to be. And we got it, and people are loving it.
Which, by the way, our petition is actually closing in on that initial Pike signatures amount that got that story greenlit. So if you haven't signed the petition yet, go in there and knock it out.
Yeah, that's a really
How many
good
signatures did the Pike show get?
About
it was
30,000.
greenlit around 37,000.
Okay.
Was it 37?
That's when we got we got more now, but that's when we got that first reaction.
I thought it was closer to 30, but yeah, so we're right in that ballpark, and I can tell you,
maybe it was
there's a lot more
27,000
people watching.
I only got to get my mother to sign this thing 8,000 more times. That's great.
It was something 7,000. It could have been 27,000. My bad.
That's okay. My mom signed it a dozen times. We're good. What else we got, B?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was distracted. Hey, 200-watt studio. I was looking at the sub count. Like, you know what? If it was 27,000, like Shane just said, and we're at 28,000, what's going on, guys? 200-watt studio. Chris, 12 Monkeys is fantastic. Smart TV, love it. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
listen, time travel is so rarely done correctly.
So true.
Not that people don't try. It's just so rarely done satisfactory. And 12 Monkeys is just a perfect time travel show. It's just so good.
Yeah, it ain't easy. That's for sure. I think that there's, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. And we're actually I'm like floating on a cloud because, Russell T Davies, who's has rebooted it once and is now doing it again, said some very lovely things about Picard yesterday on Instagram, which is like a nerd compliment that you can't imagine.
Awesome.
And I think what Doctor Who does very well, and what we try to do very differently, is you just have to have a set of rules, right? Like time travel doesn't exist, so it's impossible to say, what would or wouldn't happen in any given situation. So, but as a show, if you just set a kind of loose, because you got to be a little flexible, but like loose set of rules, and you tell really emotional human stories. You don't go wildly outside the bounds of what you tell the audience or the rule set of your show. You can wrangle it and make it work, and that's what we tried to do for 4 seasons. So.
Wow, you guys did a good job. It's really hard to just keep those threads going. I can only imagine you guys in the writing room going, because the trick is really not making it so that things that you created before don't make sense because of new things that you've created. And so I think you guys did a good job. Did you plot all that out in advance? Is that how that works? Or did you lay out the events?
So,
or
we didn't know when we were doing the first season whether we'd get a second, and we didn't know when we were doing the second whether we'd get a third. We knew when we started the third that 3 and 4 had been greenlit back to back and were going to be the end. So, seasons 1 and 2, I mean, we always knew we've got to just move forward with the hope that we'll be able to finish the story down the line. So it was really just about writing the time travel that worked within the context of the season you were writing. But then when we got to 3 and 4, we now had we can do a 20 episode novel to finish our season. And so then you can get kind of funky with let's do a scene in the first episode of the 3rd season that doesn't get paid off until the last episode of the 4th season, which would be a year apart from each other. So in the room, it takes you 2 seconds to go, let's do this, and then let's do this. In practice, you look like a genius because someone will watch an episode, completely forget you did a thing. Then a year and a half later, when the 4th season comes out, goes, oh my God, I can't believe they knew all the way back there that they were going to do this. So, I mean, you plan with the real estate that you have, and you try to put, payoffs before the plant and plant before the payoffs, and hope that you're not doing something that doesn't. I mean, I don't know how many times in the 12 Monkeys writers room we would go down a road that was really cool and super confident, and then someone would raise their hand and go, but if he travels back and does that, doesn't that undo the thing? So shouldn't this be undone? And then you kind of throw up your hands and go, well, shit, now we got to throw out a really cool idea just because it doesn't work with our time travel rules. So,
right. Yeah. So many time travel TV shows in particular sort of they start off really good and they sort of fall apart because they want to keep going, but they were set up with the sort of single timeline basis, the Back to the Future kind of method of time travel. But now they sort of have to branch out into the multiple threads, and in order to continue the series, and it just gets wild and crazy and out of control.
Yeah, you guys prioritize logic over this cool thing you wanted to do, and I think that made the story even better.
So, yeah. And the challenge was just how do you do a cool thing with the logic you got, and not change the logic to justify the cool thing.
Amen.
Right.
Well said.
We got a super chat from El Presidente Camacho. He said, I liked Beverly's arc a lot, more of her being a frontier doctor with a quick draw. I saw that movie poster or the prop poster where it said frontier medicine and had her sitting there with the
Beverly Crusher, medicine woman.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that was
El Presidente.
I have a feeling that in 25 years of Star Trek's kicking, I'm sure it still will be, someone will want to go and explore the 20 years her and Jack spent exploring the frontier medicine. I'm sure.
Hey, there's books, there's comics, there's a lot of ways to explore those little interesting period in time, and we certainly welcome other folks trying to do that. I mean, I'm very curious to see what someone else would do with that story if they had it. So
final frontier medicine.
Final frontier.
And obviously, she became very proficient on the weapons console. That moment in was it the last episode? That was a great moment where because you can kind of tell that Geordie's a little bit, we've got the doctor on the tactical console. Things aren't necessarily going to go quite to plan, and then she's firing phasers and photon torpedoes and everything, and everyone just looks around and it's like a lot's happened in 20 years. That was a great moment. I loved it.
Yeah, it was a really cool moment from Oliver Lavalier Farage. The I'm ruining the name.
You need to do a short of every name you mispronounce.
I love it. Sorry. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Oliver. The Strange New World petition is at 30,062 currently. So I was totally off. So we are super close with the Legacy one. Yeah, Legacy is at 28,700. Yeah, we're super close.
Well, we got the key words from Alex, which was, we've heard the fans. I hear the fans. And that's what he said during the Comic-Con, the year that Strange New Worlds. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, okay? But I am saying he's using the same words. And if we know anything about Alex Kurtzman, it's that, he's willing to try something when the time comes. So I just know, I'm getting this sense, and I know Chris doesn't know the answer, and we all don't know the answers, but I just get a sense that they would be crazy not to do something in the 25th century with your team, Chris.
I agree. 100% agree. From Ricky B, watching Vadic spin in her chair and her banter with Picard reminded me of the General Chang as he fired on Kirk, cry havoc and slip the dogs of war. Was this written or was it Amanda's great acting? ?
The plumber of the situation.
I can't recall. I mean, it was certainly. I can't recall. I can't speak to how much Amanda was or was not sort of intentionally evoking that. But I mean, a lot of all that physicality was all her. I mean, that was she. How we wrote that role and then how she performed that role when she showed up on set. We were kind of writing. A particular kind of dialogue, which I think to some of us was a little bit more Hannibal Lecter, a little bit more like poised and sinister, and like very erudite or whatever, and with a little bit of like whimsy and twee in there. And then she showed up and she made it a whole other thing. And once you see it done that way, you're like, oh well, I can't believe I ever wrote it any other way than that. So. She showed up and she put a whole performance to it, which elevated it like light years.
Well, I have to say I was so impressed with her. I mean, I've known who she is my whole life, but she always plays that kind of side airheady character, cute kind of character you don't think too much about. And then she came into this, and even with the trailers, I was like, oh, we'll see how this goes. But then once we met her in the series, I had chills. I mean, she gave me chills. The maniacalness of the joy she was getting out of the pain she was inflicting. It just blew me away.
Well, she in herself is like, she's a very like ethereal person. You know what I mean? Like there's a really unique and interesting quality to her. And so, she brings a whole other dimension, not only to like just her performance, but to like conversation with her off screen as well. I mean, like there is a little bit of her in Vadic, which is really interesting. She's really cool.
Wow.
And I do agree with what Ricky said in his question. I do feel like when she did that chair spin, I saw Chang all over again. I mean, I feel like she channeled her father.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's impressive. So
I just like the
whose idea was it?
Everybody loves the chair. Everyone's like, this is comfy. I'm taking this with me.
That's become a thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to have her smoking the cigars? That little.
I think that was all her. I think that was.
That was all her. Oh
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, she was just smoking, and they ran the tape. That's it.
Okay.
Well, she's a smoker, so she was. We were like, let's figure out a way to incorporate that because good villain likes a cigarette. So
it's true. Andre Benson for $5. In 1987, I said I would love to see the Enterprise A and the Enterprise D on screen at the same time. Accepted the fact that it would never happen. After episode 10, I'm super happy now.
Yeah, really well done.
I'm glad. That's
awesome.
That was a hell of a shot. So
from Bird of Prey number 5, who is very critical of Star Trek, I might add. He's very critical of Star Trek. But he's given it a shot, so I give him props for that. How many people died in episodes 9 and 10? Thousands, tens of thousands? How many people over 25 are left in Starfleet?
I think that's interesting. I mean, I think you can't. It's hard to tell. I don't think it was a massacre, right? I don't think it destroyed the fleet or anything. But I think there were certainly a fair number of casualties. I'd be hard pressed to say, exactly how many. But it was not a good day at all. No. I mean, I think that there was a lot lost. There were a lot of ships damaged, a few destroyed completely. So I mean, I think we know of one ship, just that the show shows you is destroyed, and that's however many crew members that was, 500-700 crew members on that. So a lot of lives were certainly lost. So
I think what he's saying here is, hold on a sec. I think what he's saying here is that how many people over 25 are left in Starfleet, meaning that with the young ones who took over the Borg ships, they were going around killing all the older people.
Didn't they make a comment on that at some point? It was like a little aside dialogue about how they didn't, the under 25s didn't go crazy even when they were taking over and start killing a bunch of people.
Well, yeah,
we clearly see on the Titan that there's firefights. So I think, and they are certainly enthusiastically attempting to eliminate the unassimilated. So I think it's fair to say that there were a fair number of casualties.
Yeah. I gotta say this. We know for a fact at the very end we saw the Enterprise D with the Titan, and that's when Riker says, star date, let's say 1.
Yeah, that was cool.
It was a pretty big event. In fact, when those ships are flying through space over the horizon of Earth, you see tons of wreckage, like tons of wreckage. There are multiple entire starships just like floating in the ether. So there was a lot of damage. I feel like it might be another Pearl Harbor, or it might be another Wolf 359, maybe not on the same scale. But I think a lot of people did die because Riker did say, let's call it 1. That means we got to restart a little bit here. It might be a big thing.
Yeah. It's a new day for Starfleet.
But Earth wasn't attacked. That's important.
But it's also a positive future, a hopeful future. So I think bad things happen sometimes. And you can't expect to incur the Borg and not have everything go. If this is the end of the Borg, there's going to be some casualties on our side too. So
yeah.
We had a question from Beanie 2099. Thank you, Beanie. Love this season. Kudos all around. Congrats on giving us fans a proper send-off. Was there any talk of Worf's son when writing Worf's arc? Alexander.
There was, and we talked a lot about what was Worf's backstory prior to this, and there were actually drafts of scenes written that got into it that were sort of talking about where his relationship with Alexander is now, and how that evolved, and it always felt a little bit. And I think there may be some stuff on the DVD that you'll see on the eventual Blu-rays that you'll see that hopefully will if and when extras are compiled, you'll see some of that. But it was always mostly in connection with where would the story go from here. So we talk about what would Star Trek Legacy be. Certainly, I think Alexander would play a role in that. And we've got some thoughts on what that might be and where that relationship might exist and where it might go. So but there was talk as we were trying to figure out when Worf says, "Do not presume to tell me what I have or have not sacrificed for this mission." There were a lot of iterations of what exactly that could be. But we didn't ultimately want to back ourselves into a corner narratively about what we could do later by being too specific about that character now. So,
because you could slide him easily into Star Trek Legacy or whatever that show becomes.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'd love to see that. Everyone would love to see that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like the idea of like, there's things you can mention, but like if you aren't gonna explore them, you don't want to write that into cement so that it stops you from being able to utilize those ideas in the future. I think that's really smart.
I think ultimately where we got to with Worf's story, and there was a monologue that was filmed and I think taken out because it sort of killed the scene in 306 when they find Data, where Worf does say that part of his trauma was that he had been hunting changelings and had been successfully finding and eliminating them until one day he killed a figure who didn't change into goo, and he realized he judged wrong, and he'd taken an innocent life, and it realigned his perception of had he descended into the sort of like post changeling bloodlust a little too far and gone too far, and I think that was filmed, but we took it out because again it just felt like in the scene where you're meeting Data again, now's not the time to stop down for backstory. You really want to revel in the moment that you're building. So maybe you'll get to see that in the future in some sort of release. But
that is great backstory.
Go ahead.
That is really great backstory for Worf's character arc, because he does become this kind of perfected, in my opinion. He's a perfect character. He's had this evolution from being just a warrior to this, warrior with wisdom. So I thought that was really well done.
Yeah.
Speaking of legacy or whatever, being in some part a continuation of the offspring of the next generation, and we've got Jack Crusher being Picard, and we've got, as you just mentioning, Worf Alexander, and we've got the LaForge daughters and everything. Would you see a representation there with the Soji being involved as Data's offspring potentially?
Absolutely could be. Who knows? We haven't really cast the show, so I think if it makes sense to bring that character back and there's a way to do it, we're certainly not closed to doing that. So who knows?
We got a super chat from Goron Falth. The turn on the lights dialogue on the Fat D seemed like a stab on the new Dark Trek bridges. I mean, it sort of did. I don't think that's what that was the intention.
No. I mean, I think that, I think there's a lot made about Star Trek, the bridges being too dark or whatever. But let me tell you, they look cooler that way. I mean, this, by the way, this season is a tense psychological paranoia thriller submarine movie. So do you want all the lights on? You know what I mean? When you go see a horror movie, are you like, man, these scenes are not brightly lit enough? No, we want you scared. Right. We want you tense. We want you thinking that, this ship is going to sink, or that around any corner, any one of these guys could be a changeling. So, the last thing we want to do is brighten it up and let you relax and let you breathe too much in any given scene. Now, on something for example, Strange New Worlds, which I think is by nature a little bit more airy, right? A little bit more adventuresome. Then great, a little bit more white colors, more brighter lights, all that stuff has total thematic sense for the show to be that. On something like this, it's you'd never go to you never watch Crimson Tide and think that show's lit, underlit. It's just an amazing movie, and you're it works because it's a dark, tense subdrama. So
well, and because the sets are dark.
I was going to say, and don't forget, everybody kind of forgets that on Voyager, when they went to red alert, all the lights would turn off, and it would become a dark set bridge on Voyager. And then when red alert was lifted, the lights would come back on again. So,
every time I watch a horror movie, I'm turn on the lights. Come on.
Well, here's the thing: is it doesn't, just because the set is dark doesn't mean that it's a dark and not hopeful Star Trek. And I think some people were making connections to the fact that. That because the sets were dark, somehow the Star Trek was not hopeful, but the two are not connected. And I think most reasonable people can see that.
Yeah, I've always considered all the newer Trek to be part of the movie universe in a way, because they're higher quality shoots. You don't want it lit like an episode of Friends.
That's true.
Or maybe some do. I don't know.
Maybe some do. A follow-up from Bird of Prey, which, by the way, this is high praise. This guy has been very critical for the last 5 years. Thank you for the honest answers. I do agree. Picard Season 3 is the best Trek in 20 years.
Well said.
All right, thank you, Bird of Prey.
We'll take it. We don't. It's very hard to sort of take credit or advocate for yourself without sounding like you're excluding other folks. I want to be very clear that in making this season of Star Trek, we also do honor, appreciate, love, enjoy, support all of our fellow Star Trek creatives, everybody who is out there pushing the rock up the hill of trying to get a show going. Whether it's a Starfleet Academy, whether it's Prodigy, whether it's Lower Decks, whether it's Discovery, Section 31, whatever. This is an extraordinary group of creators who all love Trek and who have all showed up to do their version of something that they've grown up and has affected them and stayed with them. So, I'm glad, and we will happily take the praise that we're getting. And if you think this is the best Trek in 20 years, we're flattered. But we are absolutely in awe of our fellow creatives as well. So we share that praise with them too.
Well, I love your humbleness, but let me just go ahead and say that anybody who's making a Star Trek show, whether it's Picard season 1, 2, or 3, Discovery, anybody who's making a show, the goal is to make the best damn Star Trek ever made. You want to be that creative team that made the best Star Trek. So, where you fall on is up to the fans, but I think you guys are all trying to make the best Star Trek you can make. So, and you did.
You know what it is? It's not. I think actually, can I'm going to suggest that a little bit. I don't think it's about making the best Trek, right? Because I think if you show up and your point of view is, I want to make the best Star Trek, it's about showing up and wanting to tell the best story, right? Because there's a lot of ways to make Trek, and there's a lot of different ways to make the best Trek. Right. So I think all you can do is not to show up in a sense of competitiveness and say, like, I want to dunk on all the other Treks, past and present. I think the idea is, I want to do justice to these characters as best I can, and then let audiences ultimately decide whether I've done that. Now, is it flattering? Do we like to hear you've made the best Trek ever? Sure. Am I partial to it? Yes. Do I think we have? Maybe. But
well said.
At the same time, we just showed up to tell a great story, and to serve these characters as best we can. We did not show up to outshine or outdo anything else. We just showed up to do what we do as best as we do it, and hope that people like it. So we appreciate that.
Well said. Well
All
done.
right. In the words of Adam Carolla, don't do your best, do my best. Curtis S for 99. Thank you, Curtis. Old school fans want a more episodic feel. If there is a continuity in storytelling, something like DS9, but maybe more serialized, Legacy can explore the galaxy in its exploration ship. Love the effort.
Thank you, Curtis.
Yeah.
Appreciate
and we talked a little bit about that before. Another 5-year mission would be really cool, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Also from 200 Watt Studio, Chris, sci-fi has rules. You have to follow the rules, but your audience likes smart TVs, so they will be watching out for rule breaking. You guys did well on 12 Monkeys. Thank you for respecting us.
Well said, 200 Watt.
Yes, well, I agree. Science fiction does have rules for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people have discovered 12 Monkeys after watching Picard, and it's really nice to see all the 12 Monkey fans that are coming up. I've watched the entire series twice, and it's really great seeing them sort of rediscover that and talk about the Word and the Witness and all the cool stuff that show brings up. It's really fun.
It's all the thing is hard science fiction. It's all space magic, right? It's just it's space fantasy. So to say that it has rules, you can pretty much do whatever you want if you can figure out a canon or a reasonable technological, mythological way to make something work. The goal is to be consistent with the rules that you decide apply to your world.
Right. Yes, exactly.
If there's grounded sci-fi, there's fanciful sci-fi, the same way that there is, Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings are very different kinds of fantasy. So you just have to pick a rule set for the project you're doing and be consistent with that. And then hopefully you're not sort of changing up your whole thing in the middle, in the middle of your journey. So
you guys have done a good job of that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yep. From President Camacho again, Presidente Camacho. Thank you, Chris and Terry and everyone else who worked on season 3. A-hole fan, olive branch accepted.
Thank you for the drinks.
Yeah, a lot of the people here are just hyper fans of what you've done, and a lot of them had written off their favorite show for a long time, and so they're feeling hopeful now that there's a version of Star Trek for them. And I like what you said, there can be Star Trek for everyone, but I think for a lot of people that are watching right now, this stream in particular, I think for a long time they felt like they were sort of left out of that equation, and now they got their show, and so that's why they're so vocal about it.
Yeah, there's a bridging of the gap.
Come to those who wait.
Well, there's a bridging of the gap here too, I think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's something that I've experienced or observed. I want to know everyone's take on this. Is I give the Picard team credit for really fine tuning or just coming up with an amazing show, an amazing story. but I also want to give Picard credit for fixing the internet, because now when I go online, it's not a bunch of negativity and complaining. It's groovy love, and Star Trek fans are coming together and talking about just Star Trek again and what they love about it, and not whatever their lives did to them to make them hate stuff.
And for 4 years, there were like 25 different factions warring with each other on a daily basis on Twitter.
Yeah, who hates Star Trek more? And you guys, many of you know that years ago I got sick of all that. I'm like, we're just going to spread positive fan vibes on whatever we're talking about. But it's just so nice. I go online and there's just love everywhere. And it feels good.
I appreciate that, and I'm so glad you said that. And I would only add to it that I think that the most Star Trek thing you can do moving forward now is when Picard, this week there's not a Picard, right? And that will, if as we move into the other shows, Section 31, Starfleet Academy, whatever comes next, whether that's your Star Trek or not, whether you like it or you don't. The most Star Trek thing you can do is not go back to what it was before, not not embrace the hate, not go and post that you don't like something. Post something about something you love, right? Yeah. Star Trek is about, we're a crew and we only succeed together and we only solve problems together, and our differences equip us all differently to overcome obstacles. And so the most Trek thing you can do, if Picard was your Trek and it revitalized and reinvigorated your feeling of Picard and community and all of that, just keep it going. Even if you don't like the next thing, if it's not your jam, whatever, find another fandom that you love and praise the shit out of that. Just when you put your fingers on the keyboard, type something positive, type something in support of somebody else. That's the best way to serve Trek and continue to be a Trekkie, even when your Trek is not currently on screen.
I
would
say
argue
whatever?
Also give it a shot, though, right? Like give everything a shot.
Whatever the next thing is, don't hate it before you see it.
Right. You can not like it, that's fine, but give it a shot first. Don't just walk in saying this is not my jam. Well, you haven't seen a frame of it yet. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Because if you don't like something about Star Trek, it's entirely possible that someone else's day was just made because of something they saw on a show that you don't like, or someone felt seen, or someone felt acknowledged, or someone felt, and that's amazing. Like if entertainment can do that, that's what Star Trek is about going boldly and seeing things that may challenge you, that may unsettle you, or it's not just about we don't just visit planets that are exactly like ours on Star Trek, right? We visit planets that challenge our perception of things, that open our minds, that we have to accept, that we can work with, that we can gain from. So it's just in the spirit of that it's just I love what you said, man. I hope we can keep the conversation positive, and I hope we can keep the fan base. If they check something out, maybe they'll find something in it they're surprised that they loved. And even if they don't, maybe they can talk positively about something that they do. So I think if we can keep the conversation in that vein, we're all Trekkies, we're all acting as Trekkies.
Well, maybe this can be the beginning of bringing the whole world back together. That'd be nice. Since
season 3,
I think the whole society needs a Picard season 3 bath. So
called season 3, solve the problem in the Middle East.
Yes.
From Tommy Tables, Chris, did you ever consider a synthetic Picard versus a resurrected organic Locutus as the big bad? We already answered the Borg Queen thing, but that's an interesting idea. Did you guys ever consider an organic, Locutus's body animated with Borg parts?
I consider that to be Jack.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it may have come up in the room at one point that it would be cool to get him kind of in the same, split the dual role of, Picard and Locutus inhabiting the same scene. But I mean, I think, ultimately seeing your son as the embodiment of the thing you most dislike about yourself or most wanted to run from or avoid, about yourself is the emotional story that you needed to tell there. So
yeah, I agree. I also think that that would have taken away from what we got with Jack, and what we got with Jack was so good. I wouldn't change that for a second.
I do want to comment one thing, because it was one of the most incredible montages I've ever seen. When Picard plugs into the collective, you guys have this. That was fucking brilliant. I mean, like I'm watching it going, this is like the best TV I've ever seen. It does the whole flashing, it does the zoom back, then all of a sudden you got Locutus right up in his damn face, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so awesome. That was my response.
As an editor, I was super jealous of what you guys.
That's our editor. I mean, Drew, our entire editing team, post production team is fucking amazing,
Pros, man.
And the score. I mean, Steven's
score. Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
The way you guys
the best music.
You guys. I can't explain this with words, but I'll say this before, and Nick, you can go. So many shows that sort of revisit old ideas or old franchises, or revive or whatever, right? Reboot. They never use the music properly. They always try to reimagine the music, and most fans of that original property are just pissed, because music is where the emotion lies. It's music.
Oh yeah.
And what Picard did, took all these themes, the Voyager theme when you saw the Voyager, the First Contact theme, all the various Star Trek themes that we all have this like innate attachment to. You used them, did not change them, instead elevated them and incorporated them into the story. And it every time, one of those when they showed the Voyager and you heard the Voyager music, my eyes started to water. I couldn't control it. 42-year-old man over here, and I'm like, what's going on my face? It's amazing what you did with the music.
Said.
Thank you. That is all Steven and Frederick. I mean, we cannot take any credit for that. They are wizards and geniuses and musical magicians at a level that, like, we were so beyond blessed to have found Steven on 12 Monkeys, and that he will continue to do projects with us. I mean, is just such a reward, because the guy should be like, John Williams level famous by now, but he'll still
so good.
He'll still
answer
the phone for us.
Yeah. And the way he was able to take the best of James Horner, Jerry Goldsmith, Dennis McCarthy, all of those composer greats that have done Star Trek over the years, and come up with something that honors the scores that have come before, but also be completely original. Well, was just, that was just phenomenal.
Totally.
Really well said.
Okay, from Andre Benson, if Legacy happens, bring back the conspiracy bugs.
Yes. I'm all for it.
Everybody wants them.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone wants them. We all see there's another conclusion. Also, if we ever redo Voyager, I want a conclusion to species 82 whatever.
8759 or whatever it is.
Whatever it is.
8372.
Yeah, because they were almost like changelings merging with conspiracy bugs. Very odd. From Cyber Soldier, this season of Picard reminded me why I love Trek. Hopefully Legacy gets the green light, and then we can see a Star Trek Archer series as well.
Ooh, dang.
Whoa, you got ambitions. I like it.
Love it, Cyber Soldier.
Cyber Soldier is already
two shows
for the next 20
even
years.
An Archer short trek would be great.
Yeah.
Scott's not doing anything. Why not?
Yeah, Scott's not on Quantum Leap. Oh, that's another one to show. You couldn't show up. You didn't show up, man. Garon Falf again. Thank you, Garon. Think we can all agree Terry and team did the best Trek. That's nice of you to say.
In my heart, it is true. That's true.
Thank you. Thank you.
Real quick, I want to give kudos. Real quick. Kudos to the brevity and how powerful the brevity was of the opening title sequence at the beginning of every episode.
True.
I was so impressed by that. I'm like, just that little thing was so powerful. You just get the title of the show and the name of the episode.
Yeah. It wasn't this long kind of, yeah.
It felt epic every week.
Yeah, we didn't want to interrupt the propulsion of the story, and so it felt more appropriate to put it at the end than the beginning. So
worked well.
Yeah.
We have a question from Curtis S. A nerd question. He says, "Was the G upgraded? Now a flagship?"
I'm sure there have been some new bells and whistles put on it that we would hopefully discover moving forward. So we'll find out.
We'll find out. Find out.
I like to hear that.
From Carlos A. Smith.
Not we might find out. We will find out.
We'll find out. Oh, breaking news.
Hear us, Paramount.
We'll find out. Carlos A. Smith says this season of Picard was 4 steps higher than the previous 2 seasons, which all previous treks since 2009 was like that. Again, everyone has their trek. A lot of people didn't like Star Trek Beyond, and I actually adored that movie. But
yeah, I did too.
I'm in the minority. Anytime you mix Beastie Boys with Star Trek, sign me up.
Star Trek Beyond is like a fine big ass episode of Star Trek. I mean, it's not aspiring to anything like greater than it is. So, I just kind of I can watch that one and just sort of appreciate it and sit on the couch and let it play and just kind of go along. So
just the Bone Spock relationship in that movie is fantastic. They're stuck together.
It's fun.
Great.
Yeah, I know why they stopped making. Shane actually figured this out. The reason they stopped making the big movie episodes of Star Trek in that with those characters, or at least reason they have now, is because those movies aren't making the $1 billion that they want them to make. To make those, for a budget of $400 million, they want to make $1 billion. They don't make that.
Well said.
It's all business at the end of the day.
From our boy PJ over at Orville Nation. Love your work, Chris. Terry has always been a uniter. # give Terry Trek.
Amen. Just throw some of that on right now. There we go.
If we can unite people and bring them together, that's the goal, right? So,
yeah. And on that note, before I let Shane take over here, I'm going to remind everyone, please go to terrytrek.com. Or if you don't trust URLs, change.org/Star Trek Legacy, whatever. But we are at, look at the number climbing, everyone. 29,169. The number is climbing, 167. As we're talking right now, the number is climbing. It's going to hit 30,000.
I feel like I'm in a Jerry Lewis telethon.
Easily.
167.
Here we are. 167. We're moving. 168. Let's get over there and sign this petition. All I'm saying is a Strange New World one was pretty much at this moment before it got greenlit. So let's make this happen. Let's make it happen.
Love it. Yeah. I'm sure there's more to come, but listen, Chris, you've been a rock star today. Does anybody else have any more questions for Chris before we
bring it on?
Here?
You know what? We have one more super chat for that. How old was Beverly when she had Jack? My calculations in her mid-50s from Cosmo Nerd for $5. Thank you, Cosmo.
Sounds about right. I think. Yes.
Yeah. People were forgetting though. Remember, don't forget the insurrection. They were all feeling pretty randy that day. So
I would have loved that actually because when we sort of first heard, it's like I initially, when we found out that Jack was Beverly's son, I thought, oh, okay, hang on, Ed Spillers is about 34. That means he was born in 88, which was the season in season 2 of Next Generation when Beverly took that year off and went to Starfleet Medical to head that up. Or did it all happen kind of as a result of Picard and Beverly getting together in the Naked Now in season 1 sort of thing? But as Brian just said, like I would have loved a little reference, sort of saying, oh well, the regenerative properties of the Baku planet from insurrection or whatever regenerated my fertility by 20 years or whatever.
Right. It's space fertility, so it's 50 is a completely reasonable age in the 25th century to have a baby. So
I know a 50-year-old woman in today's age that had a child. So
yep.
Well, let me just thank you, Chris. You've been extraordinarily generous with your time. I mean, 3 hours you're like rock star. You could just stream with us all the time. We could talk about other stuff, just like other
get me on
things.
whenever. I'm here. I'm currently unemployed.
Yes, what are you doing?
Sign the petition. Let's get.
You heard the man. You heard him. Yes. Awesome. That's great. And so, if you guys love this interview with Chris, also this Saturday, we have a big, long interview with Chris. We did a sit down with him.
Yes.
He told us all about his life. If you want to learn about everything he's done with Hellraiser and all the other stuff, where he comes from, he's the most interesting person. We love him. We love you dearly. So come out and watch that next Saturday. Nick, tell us about Sci-Finatics and what's going on with you. I know you covered all of Picard season 3. What's the plan going forward, friend?
All of season 3. Yeah, I was pumping out 3 videos a week on Picard season 3 because there's so much great stuff to talk about. Obviously, we're starting to lead into Strange New Worlds now. So obviously, that's hitting our TV screens in sort of 7 weeks or something, I think. July 15, I think it hits us. So
June.
Gonna start getting into some more Strange New World stuff. But yeah, I'm sure Brian and Shane will pop a link to my channel in the description. So be sure to check it out.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And we got JP here who now listen, JP, a lot of you guys know who JP is. He's been a friend of ours for a long time. We've done a lot of stuff together. JP got hit by the YouTube murder guys, whatever happens, and he lost his channel. So you've started a new channel, JP. Tell us about it.
They unalived his channel, you guys.
Well, I know it's a big robot misunderstanding, just from a little music cue that I thought I had permission to use, but apparently we won't get into it. So I got the new Egotastic FunTime, Egotastic FT, which I'm currently building up with an expansion. We're going beyond the Orville, a lot of Orville stuff, but I'm in the process of rebuilding. We're going to be expanding out into more of the Fuzzy Door universe, which Fuzzy Door is Seth MacFarlane's production company. They got a lot they've put out and a lot that they're going to continue to come out. So anything Orville adjacent, we're going to be covering over the next many centuries that I'm alive, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Well, make sure you guys will have the link to his channel below. Everybody who watches this, go over and sub to him. And at some point, he'll ask you to give him all your money.
Give me all your money.
Right. Which is our favorite.
I'm funny. Just give me money.
I love Anyways, that's my favorite.
We love you guys. We appreciate you all coming here. We appreciate all the super chats. And we cannot wait to see you guys next time. Of course, we've got Thursday, the live show coming up. We'll be in Vegas this week. If you guys are there, send us a chat thing and we'll hit you up. We can meet somewhere. And otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.
Wait, what else is going on Thursday morning?
Super chat them some gambling money.
Ooh, yeah.
Gambling money.
They could go to Vegas. You want them to go to Vegas?
Go ahead, Brian.
We also have, assuming everything goes well, we have a Prime video coming out on Thursday morning as well. Please do not miss that.
It will be Star Trek Legacy adjacent.
Yes. Very Star Trek Legacy-esque. There's a lot going on there. Anyways, love you guys. See you later. Let me hit this button one more time. Don't forget the petition.
Thank you
guys for coming out.